The Sword Sect, Void Mountain, Labor Peak. As a famous large sect in the Southern Territory, the Sword Sect had its back to the Grand Myriad Mountains and faced south towards Grand Qin Empire, and it occupied Void Mountain that extended continuously for over 500 kilometers. There were 7 main peaks and 36 minor peaks on Void Mountain, and Labor Peak was one of these minor peaks. As its name implied, Labor Peak was where the labor disciples of the sect resided. Even though Labor Peak was where the labor disciples resided, its scale could already compare to a small city in the Grand Qin Empire that was capable of accommodating a few tens of thousands of people. The first glimmer of dawn had just arrived. As always, Xianxia awoke at this time, and then he briefly washed his face before leaving his room with the broom behind his door. As he gazed at the glimmer of dawn on the horizon, Xianxia took a deep breath of the pure and fresh morning air. After a short moment, Xianxia's seemingly immature little face was covered in a firm expression, and he said in a low voice, "Work hard. Persist. Don't give up." As soon as he finished speaking, he walked quickly towards Cool Breeze Gorge. "Look, isn't that the former outer court disciple? So it's him. Even you know that's in the past. Now he's only a labor disciple, and he sweeps the floor just like we do. What a waste of such a handsome little fellow. He looks to be only around 16 or 17 years old now. At this age, his future was originally limitless. Unfortunately, he has come here to do odd jobs now. What a pity. I heard that an outer court elder recruited him as an outer court disciple at Southpace City. Yet who would have known that he would actually be unable to absorb profound energy for an entire year, and in a moment of rage, that outer court elder reduced him to a labor disciple. Supposedly, he's the first outer court disciple in the history of the Sword Sect that was reduced to a labor disciple, and he even obtained the title of #1 piece of trash in the Sword Sect. The Sword Sect's #1 piece of trash. TSK. This reputation of his is truly resounding. Xianxia's footsteps stopped upon hearing the voice of discussion in the surroundings, and his right hand held tightly onto the broom within it. After a short moment, he took a deep breath and paid no further attention to those people as he walked swiftly towards Cool Breeze Gorge. Cool Breeze Gorge was situated at the back of Labor Peak, and it was surrounded by 3 small hills, while a sunken gorge lay at the center. Luxuriant grass that looked like a green carpet grew within the gorge, and countless towering trees covered in leaves blotted out the sky. This was where the labor disciples usually gathered herbs and wood, and it was also the place Xianxia usually trained. On an enormous rock, Xianxia tossed the broom casually to the side before sitting cross-legged on the enormous rock, and then he withdrew a letter and a little clay figure from his chest. He'd received this letter from his family last night, and because he'd been working for almost 16 hours yesterday, he didn't have the time to read it at all. As he gazed at the little clay figure in his hand, Xianxia's slightly immature face revealed a wisp of a gentle smile. The clay figure was extremely small, and it couldn't be said to be exquisite, yet its features were clear. It was something his younger sister had made according to his appearance. Even though it didn't quite look like him and was rough, it was the most precious treasure to him. After lightly rubbing it for a while, Xianxia placed the clay figure back beneath the clothes at his chest. He looked at the letter in his hand and lightly blew off the dust on it, and then he carefully withdrew the letter within the envelope before reading it. "Big brother, we've received the gold coins you sent back last month. Since you were taken to be an outer court disciple of the Sword Sect, all of our neighbors that used to look down on us have started to frequently pay visits to our house. Humph. Little Yao knows that they're only being nice to me and mother because they know that Big Brother is capable. They're a bunch of fellows that only care about status." Xianxia took a deep breath while the corners of his mouth curled up slightly before it was suffused with a wisp of self-ridicule. Outer court disciple. After a long time, Xianxia suppressed the helplessness and unwillingness in his heart, and then his gaze descended onto the letter. Besides that, those people from the Lu clan are really annoying. They actually made a proposal for a marriage to mother, and they want little Yao to be a concubine for that fatty from their clan that weighs 150 kilograms. That fatty can't even walk, and little Yao doesn't even have the appetite to eat upon looking at him. Yet they want little Yao to be his concubine. Luckily, mother didn't agree to it. Even if I'm gonna marry someone, little Yao wants to marry Big Brother. Oh, how embarrassing. Big brother, you're not allowed to laugh at me. And that includes laughing in your heart. The Lu clan. A wisp of a cold glow flashed in Xianxia's eyes. The Lu clan had quite a huge amount of power in Southpace City. In the past, the Lu clan's patriarch intended to take his mother as a concubine, yet his mother would rather die than agree. Moreover, the Lu clan didn't dare to cause a life to be lost. After all, the laws in Grand Qin Empire were extremely strict, and even the Lu clan would face trouble if they caused someone to lose their life. However, the Lu clan didn't give up, and it constantly caused trouble for Xianxia's family in Southpace City. They wanted to force his mother to willingly marry into the Lu clan. However, even though their life was tough, his mother still didn't compromise with the Lu clan. This sort of situation had continued until he was taken as an outer court disciple by an outer court elder of the Sword Sect. After he became an outer court disciple, the Lu clan was slightly fearful because of this and didn't dare go too far. However, he'd never expected that the Lu clan had actually set their sights on his younger sister now. Strength. Strength. I must become an outer court disciple. Xianxia clenched his fists tightly. He knew that if news of him being reduced to a labor disciple reached Southpace City, then the Lu clan would definitely act brazenly, and the situation his mother and younger sister were in would definitely become fairly dangerous. When he thought up to here, Xianxia put the letter away before he walked off the enormous rock, and he pulled out a tree branch at the bottom of the enormous rock. Beneath the branch was 4 black pieces of iron that seemed like bracelets. Xianxia wore these dark pieces of iron on his arms and ankles. After he wore the pieces of iron, Xianxia immediately felt a feeling of heaviness. Fortunately, after experiencing this year of tempering himself, he'd already become accustomed to the weight of these pieces of iron. After that, he walked over to a large tree. He stomped forcefully with both legs, causing his figure to soar up before his hands grabbed firmly onto a branch, and then he relied on the strength of his arms to pull himself up and down. As he moved up and down, his figure took a strange posture. This sort of posture caused the muscles in his entire body to be exercised at once. This was the body refinement technique that he'd obtained upon becoming an outer court disciple that day, and it wasn't anything good. Every single outer court disciple had one. The effect of this cultivation technique was the strengthening of the body, and when the tendons and bones within the body were trained to a certain level, a trace of profound energy would be absorbed. With this profound energy, one would be a true profounder. At that time, he'd utilized this body refinement technique and cultivated for half a year, yet he wasn't able to form a single trace of profound energy, and it was exactly because of this that he was reduced to a labor disciple that had the lowest status in the Sword Sect. In the history of the Sword Sect, an outer court disciple being reduced to a labor disciple was unprecedented. So, he'd even obtained an extremely resounding nickname, the number 1 piece of trash in history. It wasn't just that, he'd even become the negative example the outer court elders of the Sword Sect used to teach the outer court disciples with. Once any outer court disciple was being lazy or not taking things seriously, the outer court elders would say, "Do you want to be the second Xianxia?" Under normal circumstances, such a person would leave the Sword Sect and return to the mortal world. However, Xianxia didn't. Not only did he not return to the mortal world, but he'd even willingly become a labor disciple. All of this was because he didn't want to disappoint his mother and younger sister. He was his mother and younger sister's hope. No one dared to bully his mother and younger sister because he'd become an outer court disciple of the Sword Sect, and it was because he'd become an outer court disciple that his mother and younger sister were finally able to live a slightly happier life. If he returned, then all of this would be changed. After a short moment, extremely dense sounds of someone gasping for breath suddenly resounded amidst the silent atmosphere of Cool Breeze Gorge. Sweat dripped into his eyes, and the irritation from this caused Xianxia to shut his eyes tightly, and he allowed the sweat on his forehead to rain down towards his face. At this moment, Xianxia felt numbness and exhaustion throughout his body. Especially his arms, they even felt like lead and were extremely heavy. A normal person would choose to rest at this moment, yet he didn't. He gritted his teeth and grabbed the branch tightly before rising up and down without end. After a long time, Xianxia's face had flushed red while sweat rained down from his forehead. The green-colored clothes of a labor disciple he wore were already drenched with sweat, and the feeling of reaching his limit caused him to feel dizzy. In the end, his grip loosened, and his entire body fell heavily to the ground. As he lay on the ground, Xianxia gasped for breath. At this moment, he didn't even have the strength to move a finger. A wisp of light arose from the horizon, and the scene in the distance gradually became clearer. A cool breeze blew by, and Xianxia took a deep breath greedily. Suddenly, Xianxia's figure sat up abruptly while his eyes opened wide, and his face was covered in disbelief. He'd actually sensed profound energy. Yes, he'd sensed profound energy. That trace of profound energy flowed intermittently along the meridians in his body and flowed gradually into his dantian. Even though this trace of energy still didn't flow continuously and was weak, he'd really sensed it. What's going on? Xianxia felt that the trace of profound energy had suddenly vanished after it entered his dantian. Yes, it had directly vanished as if it had never existed. Xianxia's brows knit together tightly as he searched for that trace of profound energy in his body. After a short moment, Xianxia's eyes opened wide while his face was covered in shock. I actually have 2 dantians. Xianxia gulped with an expression of disbelief. He'd found that trace of profound energy, or precisely speaking, it wasn't a trace but a strand. There was a tiny vortex in the deepest depths of his dantian, and that tiny vortex was filled with profound energy. Now, Xianxia understood why he wasn't able to absorb profound energy in the past. It wasn't that he wasn't able to absorb it, but it had been immediately absorbed by the tiny vortex as soon as he absorbed it into his body. On the other hand, the reason he hadn't noticed that tiny vortex was because that tiny vortex was hidden extremely deep within his dantian. If he didn't follow that trace of profound energy from before and searched, he would have probably been forever unable to notice that tiny vortex. The only reason he was able to sense profound energy now was that tiny vortex was full. Yes, that tiny vortex was filled with profound energy, so this trace of profound energy had been pushed into his normal dantian. However, for some unknown reason, that tiny vortex forcefully absorbed that trace of profound energy right after that, and it didn't even leave a trace behind in his normal dantian. According to his knowledge, ordinary people possessed a single dantian, and he didn't know if others had 2 dantians like him. However, he knew a single thing: he wasn't a piece of trash, and he could cultivate. When he thought up to here, a wisp of a faint smile appeared on the corners of Xianxia's mouth. After a short moment, this arc gradually grew, and then light laughter left his throat. After another short while, this light laughter had finally transformed into utterly roaring and wild laughter. Xianxia can become a profounder. Xianxia can become a profounder. Ha ha! At this moment, Xianxia laughed to the point of crying, and he cried like a child. For countless days and nights, even though he hadn't given up, an invisible mountain had always been pressing down on his shoulders. He wasn't afraid of the ridicule of others and being called a piece of trash, nor was he afraid of being looked down upon by others. However, he was afraid that the hopes of his mother and younger sister would be destroyed. He was afraid that his mother and younger sister would be humiliated by their neighbors like they had in the past. He was afraid his mother and younger sister would have to go through days of hunger like they had in the past. He was truly afraid, extremely afraid, yet now he had the ability to stop all of this from happening. So long as he cultivated the body refinement technique to the highest level and attained the 6th rank of the mortal realm, then he would be able to become an outer court disciple. So long as he became an outer court disciple, he would have cultivation resources, cultivation techniques, and sword skills. At that time, he would have the opportunity to become an inner court disciple. So long as he was able to become an inner court disciple, then even the governor of Southpace City would have to treat him with respect. Warm sunlight passed through the forest and illuminated Xianxia's face that was still covered in sweat, and it cast a red glow on Xianxia's face. Why did I never notice in the past that the scenery in the surroundings was so beautiful? Xianxia smiled and suppressed the excitement in his heart before wiping the sweat on his face. And then he removed the pieces of iron on his body and placed them back at the bottom of the enormous rock. After that, He walked over to pick up the broom before swiftly running towards the entrance of the gorge. He still remembered that his assignment today was to sweep the Sword Sect's training grounds. There was a training ground on Labor Peak, and it was extremely large and won over an entire kilometer in every direction. It was completely paved with grayish-white stones, and it was simple yet magnificent. There was an enormous stone sword that stood towering at the center of the grounds. The enormous training ground before him was the place where outer court disciples usually came to train, and it was the place Xianxia had to clean today. It was naturally impossible for him to clear such a large place by himself, and it was the workload for 4 people in a day. If it was yesterday, then perhaps Xianxia would grumble about it. Because such a large place required at least 4 people working hard for an entire day to clean it completely. In this way, he wouldn't have any time at all to cultivate today. However, his heart was filled with hope now, so everything was agreeable to him. Oh, isn't that our number 1 piece of trash in history? Oh, right, it's our great outer court disciple, Xianxia. Our outer court disciple really woke up early today, huh? Have you already cleaned the training grounds? Haha! Right at this moment, a sound of laughter that carried ridicule sounded out from the side. When he heard this ridiculing voice, Xianxia turned around to look at the 3 people that stood at the right. These 3 people were his workmates for today. Xianxia had an emotionless expression as he gazed at their teasing looks, and his emotions couldn't be discerned. He knew the man in the lead. He was called Du Xiu, and he was a labor disciple as well. However, his reputation was terrible. Even though he was a labor disciple, he'd made others do his work for him since the very beginning. The reason Du Xiu was so arrogant was that he had an uncle and cousin brother. His uncle was Manager Su of the Labor Division, and the over 2,000 labor disciples in the Sword Sect were managed by Manager Su. On the other hand, his cousin brother was an outer court disciple. With these 2 people as his backing, Du Xiu could be said to be unbridled within the labor peak, and he looked down upon everyone. As for the 2 others by Du Xiu's side, the one on the left was Gao Qiu, and the one on the right was Li Gu. Both of them were labor disciples as well, but the 2 of them had another nickname, bootlickers. Xianxia restrained his thoughts and said, "Since everyone is here, then let's divide the work. There's 4 of us, so we'll each be responsible for a side. It's fair like this. Ha ha!" Li Gu that stood on Du Xiu's right roared with laughter, and he pointed at Xianxia as he said, "Big Brother Du, did you hear him? He actually distributed work to Big Brother Du. I'm almost dying of laughter. I thought that kid would be sensible, but I never expected that he would be an idiot. That's wrong." Gao Qiu gazed at Li Gu's feigned seriousness as he said, "He's a superior outer court disciple. Even though it was in the past, he was still a member of the outer court. How could we make someone that has been an outer court disciple do such lowly work? Big Brother Du, what do you think?" "Ha ha!" Li Gu roared with laughter, and he looked at Gao Qiu as he said, "Gao Qiu, you're good. You derided him in such a roundabout manner. I, Li Gu, am ashamed of my inferiority. No wonder Big Brother Du thinks highly of you." "Not at all, not at all," Gao Qiu said modestly. "I'm just good at talking. You, on the other hand, can fight. Every time we encounter someone insensible, it's always you who deals with them. You're Big Brother Du's right-hand man." For a time, the 2 of them started to praise each other. Xianxia gazed coldly at them, and he allowed them to flatter each other. Du Xiu walked over to Xianxia before stretching out his hand to pat Xianxia on the shoulder, and then he grinned as he said, "Kid, the 3 of us aren't feeling well today, so you'll clean the training grounds by yourself today. All right?" "No!" Xianxia swiped Du Xiu's hand off his shoulder, and then he walked over to Li Gu and Gao Qiu before he said, "I know that all of you feel envious that I've been an outer court disciple in the past, and you're all jealous. After all of you were even more lowly than dogs before outer court disciples in the past. Now that I've become a labor disciple from an outer court disciple, all of you intend to use me to reclaim the dignity all of you lost in the past. I understand." As soon as he finished speaking, Xianxia turned around, picked his broom up, and then walked towards the training grounds. Yang Ye's straightforward ridicule caused Li Gu and Gao Chou's faces to flicker between a livid and pale expression from rage, and they seemed as if they were poisoned. At the side, Du Xiu's eyes narrowed slightly, while his expression turned gloomy, because amongst the almost 3,000 labor disciples in the labor division, there was never one that didn't give him face like this. As bootlickers, the ability to observe a person's expression was a requirement. When he saw Du Xiu's expression, Li Fei understood Du Xiu's intentions, and he charged over to stand before Yang Yi and pointed at Yang Yi as he said, "Yang Yi, do you think you're still an outer court disciple? You're just a piece of trash that wasn't able to attain the first rank of the mortal realm in an entire year, and you're the #1 piece of trash in history. If Big Brother Du asked you to clean for him, then it's because he thinks highly of you. Don't push your luck. I'm a piece of trash." Yang Yi stopped and said, "But I'm better than some slave that only knows how to be a dog at someone's side. When your master is happy, you flatter him. When he's unhappy, you come out to bark at others. Beat him up. Beat him to death. I'll take responsibility for it." Du Xiu spoke with a gloomy expression. Never had anyone within the labor division dared to insult his dignity. There were none in the past, there wouldn't be any now, and there wouldn't be any in the future as well. He would absolutely not allow anyone to become an exception. When he heard Du Xiu, Li Gu, who stood before Yang Yi, instantly started laughing savagely, and then he smashed his fist towards Yang Yi's face. He'd wanted to attack Yang Yi since a long time ago, but Du Xiu hadn't given the word. He didn't dare to it, because if he killed someone, then he wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. But now Du Xiu had given the word, so he had no worries any longer. Yang Yi's face sank when he saw Li Gu attack, and his figure swiftly moved 2 steps back to avoid Li Ji's fist. At the same time, he raised the broom in his hand and suddenly swung it towards Li Gu. Smack! Li Ji's fist missed, and his head just happened to be struck by Yang Yi's broom. A shrill cry resounded while burning pain spread through his face, and he took a few steps back successively before squatting on the ground in pain while ceaselessly rubbing his eyes with his hands. The broom was covered in dust, so that strike from Yang Yi caused countless specks of dust to fall into his eyes. The eyes couldn't tolerate any dirt, and Li Ji's tears were on the verge of flowing. Bastard! When he saw Yang Yi actually dared to counterattack, Du Xiu's expression turned savage, and he cursed furiously before charging forward swiftly and smashing his fist down towards the back of Yang Yi's head. This #1 piece of trash in history that stood before him had actually dared to insult his dignity, and this was something that Du Xiu couldn't tolerate. Besides his uncle, he was the boss within Labor Peak, and everyone on Labor Peak had to listen to him. Yang Yi was infuriated when he sensed Du Xiu attacking him from behind. He wasn't someone that liked to cause trouble, yet it didn't mean he was afraid of it. These 3 people before him had first humiliated him verbally, then asked him to complete a workload that was for 4 by himself. Now, they'd even attacked him directly, and he was truly infuriated. Yang Yi turned around and suddenly smashed his fist at Du Xiu's right fist. Bang! The 2 fists collided, and then a cracking noise resounded. Du Xiu's eyes instantly opened wide while an expression of pain suffused his face. The bones in his hand had been broken. Du Xiu was just about to withdraw his hand, yet Yang Yi flipped his hand and grabbed at this moment. He grabbed a hold of Du Xiu's weak fist before pulling on it forcefully, and then his right leg suddenly kicked towards Du Xiu's stomach. Bang! Du Xiu was instantly blasted flying, and he fell heavily to the ground after flying back by a meter. Even though Yang Yi was a labor disciple just like the 3 of them, unlike them, he didn't enjoy himself and waste time after finishing the work for the day. Every day, besides his usual work, all of his time was utilized to temper his body. No matter rain or shine, he'd never stopped since the moment he arrived at the Sword Sect. So, even if he hadn't become a profounder yet, the strength of his body wasn't something they could compare to. After he dealt with them, Yang Yi turned around to look at Gao Qiu that stood at the side. When he saw Yang Yi look at him, Gao Qiu instinctively took 2 steps back, and then he clenched his fists tightly while doing his best to keep calm. He said, Du Xiu is Manager Su's nephew, and his cousin brother is an outer court disciple. Manager Su and his cousin brother won't let you off for harming him. Yang Yi paid no attention to Gao Qiu that was trying to borrow the influence of manager Su and Du Xiu's cousin brother. He walked over to Du Xiu that lay on the ground and squatted down before he patted Du Xiu's face that was covered in fear, and he said, "Now, the three of you will clean the entire training grounds. Do you have a problem with that?" Du Xiu gulped and was hesitating. Yet when he saw Yang Yi's clenching his fist, he hurriedly said, "No problem. No problem at all. We'll start cleaning it right away." A wise man didn't fight when the odds were against him. This principle was something his uncle had taught him, and it was of use to him now. Yang Yi glanced indifferently at Du Xiu before he stood up, and then he supported the broom on his shoulder as he walked swiftly towards Cool Breeze Gorge. He knew that this wasn't the end of this matter, and this fellow would definitely come looking for trouble with him. Du Xiu didn't dare to do that himself, but he would definitely ask his uncle or his cousin brother that was an outer court disciple to come go for trouble with him. Presently, only his body's strength was slightly strong, but he still wasn't a profounder. At this moment, he would absolutely not be a match for an outer court disciple. For the sake of having the ability to protect himself, he had to train bitterly and become a profounder as soon as possible. Otherwise, once that outer court disciple came looking for him, he wouldn't even have the ability to resist. So, he had to intensify his training and strive to become a profounder as soon as possible. "Big brother Du, what should we do?" Li Gu helped Du show up and spoke in a low voice. Now, he understood that he was utterly not a match for that fellow called Yang Yi, and if he looked for trouble with Yang Yi, then he would be looking for a beating. Gao Qiu, who stood at the side, remained silent because Yang Yi's ruthlessness and decisiveness caused him to feel slightly fearful. "Wait for my cousin brother to return from visiting his relatives in the mortal world. At that time, I'll make him suffer." As he gazed at Yang Yi's figure in the distance, the glow of resentment flickered in Du Xiu's eyes. It had already been 5 years, he'd been a labor disciple for 5 years, and there hadn't been a single person that dared to treat him in this way and actually dared to attack him. When he thought of this, the resentment in his eyes grew deeper. Did all of you see that? That number 1 piece of trash in history? Wait, no, Yang Yi. He bashed up those 3 bastards. What? Really? That bastard, Du Xiu, was beaten up? You wouldn't be lying, right? Du Xiu's uncle is Manager Su, and his cousin brother is an outer court disciple. Would that labor disciple called Yang Yi dare to beat him? Why would I lie to you? I saw it with my own 2 eyes. Du Xiu and those 2 bootlickers of his acted as they usually did. They didn't intend to work, and they asked Yang Yi to clean the training grounds by himself. Yang Yi didn't agree to it, and then Du Xiu and the others attacked him. Yet who would have expected that they were bashed up by Yang Yi instead? Moreover, they're even doing Yang Yi's share of the work. Haha, nice. That bastard Du Xiu always relies on his uncle and cousin brother to bully all of us labor disciples on Labor Peak. Now he finally bit off more than he could chew. Come, let's go tell the others about this and let them feel happy as well. In next to no time, the matter of Yang Yi furiously beating up Du Xiu spread throughout the entire Labor Peak. Yang Yi, on the other hand, had already arrived at Cool Breeze Gorge. At the side of a pool in Cool Breeze Gorge, Yang Yi sat cross-legged on the ground with his eyes closed slightly, and he'd immersed his mind into his body. After the excitement he felt earlier, Yang Yi felt that it was slightly strange, because no matter how he thought about it, it didn't seem right to have 2 dantians. So, he decided to figure out the tiny vortex at the depths of his dantian. This time, he saw the tiny vortex dantian clearly. It was only the size of a palm, and it ceaselessly emanated suction force. It was precisely this suction force that instantly absorbed the profound energy he absorbed into his body after his training. This tiny vortex had completely absorbed all the profound energy within his dantian, causing him to be utterly unable to become a profounder. No, it should be said that he'd already become a profounder a very long time ago, because becoming a profounder depended on one's natural talent. If one was able to absorb profound energy through tempering the body, then one was a profounder. However, his profound energy had been absorbed by the tiny vortex as soon as it entered his body, causing him to have the mistaken view that he wasn't a profounder. Based on the standards of being a profounder, he was already a profounder since a long time ago. Yang Yi tried to control this tiny vortex. In his opinion, since this tiny vortex was within his body, then it ought to belong to him and be controlled by him. However, to his disappointment, every time he intended to draw profound energy out from within the tiny vortex would seem as if it had been provoked by something and speed up its revolutions, causing him to be utterly unable to drag out even a trace of profound energy. That profound energy is mine. After trying hard for a long time, Yang Yi was slightly annoyed when he noticed the tiny vortex was still unwilling to release the profound energy within it, and he cursed in his heart. If he was unable to control this tiny vortex, then didn't it mean that he would be working for that tiny vortex for his entire lifetime? Most importantly, if he didn't possess profound energy, then how would he improve the intensity of his training? After all, the current intensity of his training had already reached his limits. Under the situation that he didn't possess any cultivation resources and didn't possess the support and recovery provided by profound energy, raising the intensity of his training might cause irreparable harm to his body. Give me a bit, just a bit. You must realize that you'll be unable to absorb profound energy without me. Give me a little bit and I'll be able to absorb even more profound energy. Isn't all the profound energy I absorb yours in the end? What do you think? It's advantageous for both of us to work together, and it'll be disadvantageous for both of us if we don't. Since doing things by force didn't work, Yang Yi decided to try negotiating. Even though it was slightly aggrieving because the profound energy were the fruits of his laborious training, it couldn't be helped. The profound energy was the key to whether he would be able to become a true profounder, and it was related to whether he would be able to become an outer court disciple. So he had no choice but to swallow his pride. After a short while, the tiny vortex showed no reaction. Yet just when Yang Yi was prepared to curse furiously, a string of light golden profound energy suddenly flowed out from within the tiny cortex. When he saw this, Yang Yi almost leaped up with excitement. After another short period of time, another string flowed out. Gradually, string after string of light golden profound energy flowed out without end, and the tiny vortex only stopped after around 20 strings of light golden profound energy had flowed out. The light golden profound energy flowed into his normal dantian, and Yang Yi was just about to shout when the light golden profound energy suddenly flowed towards the meridians within his entire body. After that, these strings of light golden profound energy slowly entered his muscles. At this moment, Yang Yi felt as if he could hear the cheers of countless cells within his muscles, and then the sore and exhausted feeling he had vanished silently before it was replaced with more and more abundant energy. Right when Yang Yi was bewildered, he suddenly felt as if something was wriggling on his body. He hurriedly removed his clothes and lowered his head to take a look, and then Yang Ye's eyes instantly opened wide. He saw that the skin on his body was falling off at a visible speed. His skin was being replaced. This was a sign of attaining the 4th level of the body refinement technique. Attaining the 4th level of the body refinement technique meant that he was a 4th rank profounder now. Ha ha! When he thought up to hear, Yang Yi leaped up from the ground and started to roar with laughter. After laughing for a while, he seemed to feel that something was off, and he hurriedly stopped his laughter and lowered his head to look at his body. As he gazed at his body that was ceaselessly shedding its skin, Yang Yi hurriedly removed all the clothes he wore, and then he leaped into the pool. After all his skin had shed off, he flipped around in the pool before leaping out of it. He lightly rubbed the skin before his chest, and everywhere his palm passed. It was like touching a smooth rock, and it sent an unusually firm feeling to the center of his palm. Pop! 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 Yang Yi suppressed the excitement in his heart and picked up a tree branch from the ground, and then he immediately executed the basic sword technique. As he executed it, the sound of wind thumped while it actually caused some of the dirt on the ground to rise up into the air. Its impetus was something that couldn't be compared to the past at all. After he finished, Yang Yi hurriedly immersed his mind into his body once more. After a short moment, an overjoyed expression surged onto his face. Yes, he wasn't mistaken, he'd really attained the 4th rank of the mortal realm. From someone that wasn't even a profounder, he'd instantly attained the 4th rank of the mortal realm. Yang Yi felt dazed as if he was dreaming, but in next to no time, he came to an understanding. Since the moment he'd arrived at the sword sect, he'd started to cultivate bitterly in the body refinement technique. At that time, even though he couldn't be said to be the most diligent amongst the outer court disciples, he was absolutely able to be ranked in the top 3. Since that moment until now, he'd been cultivating in the body refinement technique for 2 years now. So, his body had already attained an extremely strong state. Now that profound energy had entered his body, it was like he'd suddenly obtained the pin to his bank account. With the pin, he was naturally able to withdraw his money. Simply speaking, his abundant accumulations had finally surged out. Xianxia's brows suddenly knit together because he'd suddenly thought of a problem. And the problem was that his profound energy was light gold in color. Light gold profound energy? Is it unique to me? Or is the profound energy within the bodies of others light gold as well? Xianxia was slightly bewildered. Forget it. When I enter the outer court in the future, I'll definitely be able to know if I'm the same as others after I come into contact with more profounders. Xianxia wasn't someone that liked to rack his head over a problem, and he only thought about it for a moment before putting it aside. Xianxia sat cross-legged on the ground before his mind descended once more into his body. At this moment, the golden profound energy from before had already vanished from within his normal dantian, and it was completely empty. Brother, I presume you understand me. How about we do this? Let's equally split the profound energy I absorb in the future. I'll give you all the profound energy I absorb, and in return you have to give me that type of light golden profound energy. I'm not taking advantage of you because you ought to be aware that I'll only be able to absorb more profound energy by becoming stronger. Conversely, if I don't become stronger, then the amount of profound energy I absorb will definitely be extremely scarce. So, I should be prioritized now, and once I've become strong, you'll be able to obtain even more profound energy. What do you think? Xianxia had an absurd feeling that the tiny vortex was able to understand him. There was no reason for this, and it was just a feeling of his. So, he decided to discuss the matter with the tiny vortex. Otherwise, if the tiny vortex monopolized all the profound energy in the future, then he would definitely be filled with anguish. After a short moment, and right when Xianxia felt slightly impatient, the tiny vortex suddenly started revolving, and it revolved for a moment before it stopped. Xianxia started smiling when he sensed the actions of the tiny vortex. His intuition told him that the tiny vortex had agreed. Obviously, the tiny vortex wasn't satisfied with the speed he absorbed profound energy at now, so it had decided to allow him to become strong first. This was an investment. After he wore his clothes, Xianxia walked over to the place where the iron pieces were hidden, and he wore them. At this moment, Xianxia wasn't able to feel a shred of weight coming from them. He didn't have a cultivation technique now, so he could only utilize the body refinement technique to absorb profound energy. The more ruthlessly he trained, the more profound energy he would be able to absorb, and that meant that the amount of light golden profound energy he obtained would be even more. With even more light golden profound energy, he would be able to utilize it to strengthen his body and improve his cultivation. Ah! Help me! Stop chasing after Bauer. Grandpa! Save me! Right when Xianxia intended to train until his limits, a sharp cry suddenly sounded from the distant forest. The voice was slightly immature, and it was obviously a little girl. Xianxia stopped moving when he heard this, and he looked towards the forest in the distance. Suddenly, a little girl wearing a white dress with floral patterns ran out of the forest in panic. The little girl was only around 13 or 14 years old, and she had an extremely long braided ponytail behind her head. Her countenance was ghastly pale while she bit tightly on her tiny lips, and she was dashing desperately while using both her hands and feet to run. The little girl ran out of the forest. When she saw Xianxia, her originally pale countenance instantly grew paler, and she shouted as she ran, "That little laborer over there! Quickly run away! The little snake has gone mad!" Rumble! Right when Xianxia was dazed, the ground suddenly started to shake, and then an enormous creature rampaged through the forest behind the little girl and charged out. A colossal python king. When he saw this enormous creature, Xianxia's countenance instantly became as pale as the little girl. "That's a little snake? That's a colossal python king. The colossal python king was a 5th-rank dark beast. Its body was like the size of 3 adults and around 10 m in length, and its eyes were like the size of fists. Most importantly, its scales and the defense it provided was something that might not be possible to be slashed apart even with a sword skill. Even though the little girl was young, she ran extremely swiftly. When she saw Xianxia, she'd actually forcefully changed her direction and ran towards another direction. Doing this closed the gap between her and the colossal python king, and if Xianxia turned around and fled, then he would probably be able to escape. Xianxia hesitated for a moment. In the next moment, he took a deep breath and stopped hesitating. He picked up a huge rock at the side and ran towards the colossal python king. When he was only over 10 meters away from it, he held the rock up and utilized every single ounce of strength in his body to suddenly toss it at the colossal python king. Bang! The rock smashed onto the python king's head, and then it shattered into pieces. Xianxia's eyelids twitched when he saw this. Isn't this level of defense a bit too formidable? Being struck by the rock infuriated the python king, and it decisively abandoned its chase of the little girl before smashing down towards Xianxia with a twist of its body. The python king's body was enormous. Everywhere it passed, it left a mess in its wake. Anything and everything struck by it was smashed mercilessly, and its impetus was extremely shocking. "Get away quickly!" Xianxia roared when he saw the little girl was looking at him with a curious expression. At the same time, he picked up a rock on the ground and charged towards the python king. Truthfully speaking, Xianxia didn't have a shred of confidence when facing this enormous monster. However, he was truly unable to run away. If the little girl had drawn the python king over to him at the beginning, then he would definitely flee immediately. But the little girl would rather be chased herself than implicate him. She's a very kind little girl, just like little Yao. Of course, the most important factor was that he currently had the strength to try to go against it. When she saw Xianxia charging at the colossal python king, the little girl gasped for breath while her pitch-black and lively eyes gazed at him while blinking. Obviously, she'd never expected that this labor disciple would fight the python king for her. "Ah!" Xianxia bawled as he utilized all the strength in his body to smash the rock in his hand onto the python king's head. Bang! A muffled bang resounded as the stone shattered into pieces, and Xianxia's figure was blasted flying and crashed heavily onto the ground. As he wiped off the fresh blood on the corner of his mouth, Xianxia understood the meaning of throwing an egg against a rock. That strike from before felt as if he'd struck the stone on black iron. Not only had the rock shattered, but even his arm had also become numb from the impact. After it was hit by Xianxia, the python king flicked its tongue before its figure twisted once more and smashed down towards Xianxia. As he gazed at the colossal python king that seemed like a small mountain, Xianxia's eyelids twitched, and he didn't dare let his thought run wild any longer. He hastily stood up and spat out a mouthful of blood before charging over once more. It was definitely impossible for him to flee because there was nothing to obstruct the python king behind him, and if it were on flat ground, then he would definitely be unable to outrun it. Since he couldn't run, then he could only put up a desperate fight. When he arrived 2 meters before the python king, Xianxia let out a clear shout before his legs swiftly stomped on the ground. His figure leaped up into the sky before his fists smashed down towards the sky-blue fist-sized eyes of the python king. When it noticed Xianxia's fists smashing over, the python twisted its body, and its enormous tail carried the whistling sound of wind as it swiftly swept towards Xianxia. The snake's tail was extremely swiftly, and it was swift to the point Xianxia didn't even have the time to approach the python king before he was struck by it. Bang! Xianxia instantly felt as if his waist had broken apart, and he let out a muffled groan while a mouthful of fresh blood sprayed out. His figure was struck by the force of the python king's tail to the point of being blasted flying, and he flew a distance of almost 10 meters before he crashed heavily into a patch of grass and caused countless specks of dust to rise into the sky. "I'm not a match for it." Actually, he knew that he wasn't a match for it since the beginning. The defensive capability of dark beasts was absolutely capable of crushing all humans at the same cultivation realm, and it was even possible for them to surmount a realm and do battle. Not to mention that the dark beast before him was even superior to him in cultivation. Are you fine? Meanwhile, Bauer hurriedly ran over to Yang Ye's side, and she helped Yang Yi up while she spoke in a light voice. You still haven't fled? Yang Yi was barely able to stand up, and his face couldn't help but darken when he noticed the little girl hadn't fled. He desperately strived for an opportunity for her to flee, yet she'd actually not fled. Yang Yi truly desired to hit someone at this moment. Bauer shook her little head, causing her braided ponytail to swing from side to side, and she said seriously, You were so courageous, so how could Bauer possibly leave you here and flee by myself? Bauer will live and die together with you. Come, stick this strength talisman on yourself, and then continue bashing it. As she spoke, she withdrew a piece of talisman paper from the little pouch in front of her dress, and then she directly slapped it onto Yang Ye's shoulder. When the talisman paper was slapped onto Yang Ye's shoulder, it transformed into a strand of golden light that entered Yang Ye's body. Once the golden light entered his body, Yang Yi instantly felt his spirits raise, and it felt as if energy was dashing throughout his body. He didn't have the time to carefully sense the changes in his body before Yang Yi picked up a stick by his side and charged towards the Python King. He really wanted to rest for a while, but would the Python King give him such a chance? When the little girl stuck that piece of talisman paper on his shoulder, the Python King had already started charging towards the two of them. This time, the colossal Python King had obviously become serious. Its enormous mouth opened up and revealed the scarlet-red tongue within it that was the size of an arm. As he gazed at that bloody mouth that was more than 3 times the size of his head, Yang Yi felt his scalp go slightly numb. He didn't know where he got the courage to go against a colossal Python King that was a rank higher than him, but he knew that if he ran while on such flat ground, then he would absolutely die. Since it was like that, it was better to go all out because this way he would still have a slight chance of survival. Ha! When he thought up to here, Yang Yi was rid of even the slightest shred of hesitation, and he shouted explosively as he sped up, and he charged towards the Python King with the stick in hand. When it noticed Yang Yi charging towards it, the Python King flicked its scarlet-red tongue, and then its body twisted. With the front of its body as support, its tail swiftly swept horizontally towards Yang Yi again. Everywhere its tail passed, the ground was covered in a mess, and pieces of leaves covered the sky. Yang Ye's eyes squinted when he saw the tail sweeping towards him, and his figure suddenly knelt down to the ground and skid forward. When he felt the tail sweep past his face, Yang Yi let out a furious shout and revealed a savage expression. He suddenly slapped the ground with his left hand and utilized the force from it to leap up, and then he held the stick with both his hands before suddenly stabbing it down fiercely at the fist-sized right eye of the Python King. This was a move in the basic sword technique. Even though it was only a wooden stick in his hand, he had no other choice and could only make do with it. Hiss! The Python King hadn't expected that its tail would miss. So, when it noticed the stick assaulting its eye, it moved its head to the side and avoided the stick. However, the stick had still pierced into its head. The Python King's body instantly started to twist violently, and at the same time, the Python King's tail swept upwards and coiled around Yang Ye's waist. When he noticed that he'd actually pierced through the dark scales of the colossal Python King, Yang Yi was first stunned. Yet he didn't have the time to feel overjoyed when he sensed tightness coming from his waist. After that, intense pain swept throughout his body, and it felt as if his waist was about to break. Yang Yi was horrified when he noticed the Python King had twisted its tail around him. Right at this critical moment, the mysterious tiny vortex within his body finally stopped being stingy, and the golden profound energy surged ceaselessly into his normal dantian. When he sensed the profound energy enter his body, Yang Yi didn't have the time to think too much about it. He abandoned the stick and circulated the profound energy within his body to his fists, causing a light golden glow to flash on his fists. After that, he smashed his fists down fiercely onto the Python King's tail as if he'd gone mad. To Yang Ye's surprise, every single punch of his had actually struck the dark scales of the Python King to the point of sinking down. He knew that it was definitely the effect of that talisman paper and the light golden profound energy within his body, because he was clearly aware of his own strength, and it was absolutely unable to harm the colossal Python King. When she saw the light golden profound energy on Xianxia's fists, the eyes on Baoer's pale face lit up, and she muttered, "Gold profound energy. This little laborer actually possesses gold profound energy from amongst the profound energy of the 5 elements." Bang! 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 The colossal python king was clearly in pain from Xianxia's frenzied punches. Its tail gradually loosened while the scales on the spot where Xianxia's fist descended had already been blasted off to reveal the scarlet-red flesh of the python king. After being in a short stalemate, the colossal python king had fallen into a disadvantageous position, because its tail was already on the verge of being smashed into 2 pieces by Xianxia. As it sensed the intense pain that came from its tail, the colossal python king loosened the grip of its tail and allowed Xianxia to drop to the ground, and then it retreated by a few meters before its fist-sized eyes gazed at Xianxia while flowing with a ferocious glow. However, it carried a trace of fear this time. Meanwhile, Baoer hurriedly ran over to Xianxia's side before stretching out her hand to support his falling figure. And then she said, "Little laborer, continue bashing it." It actually chased Baoer for 2 hours because of a low-grade profound rank spirit herb. If Baoer didn't have a strider talisman, then Baoer would definitely be in its stomach. Xianxia gasped when he heard this. A profound rank spirit herb. Now, he knew why this dark beast was chasing her. Spirit herbs were extremely valuable, and they were divided into heaven, earth, profound, and yellow ranks. Yellow rank spirit herbs could be purchased in the mortal world for over 10,000 gold coins. To Xianxia, 10,000 gold coins were already an astronomical figure. After all, his pay from a month of work was only a few tens of gold coins. As for the profound rank that was a rank higher than the yellow rank, Xianxia was truly unable to imagine how many gold coins it could sell for. Most importantly, the value of spirit herbs to dark beasts was equivalent to the value of high-grade cultivation techniques to humans. Carried lethal attraction to them. Baoer frowned when she noticed how weak Xianxia seemed to be, and then she placed her hand into the little pouch before her dress. After that, she drew out a green-colored talisman and a white-colored talisman before slapping it onto Xianxia's body, and then she said, "Little laborer, continue bashing it. Baoer will cheer for you." The corners of Xianxia's mouth twitched when he heard this, and he glared fiercely at Baoer. Right at this moment, he felt his spirits being refreshed once more as a strand of strange energy entered his body. That strand of strange energy swiftly flowed an entire round through the meridians within his entire body, and then he felt the exhaustion he experienced from the battle being wiped away completely. Moreover, his entire body was filled with strength. It wasn't just that. He even felt the energy of the heavens and the earth in the surroundings ceaselessly surging into his body. In the end, they surged through his meridians like a torrent. Suddenly, the tiny vortex started revolving at high speeds, and then all of this profound energy vanished within his dantian at a speed that was swifter than the eye could see. After another 2 breaths of time, a strand of light golden profound energy suddenly flowed out from within the tiny vortex. Xianxia was delighted in his heart when he sensed the changes in his body, and then he glanced at the little girl's pouch while feeling shocked in his heart. He knew that the profound energy that appeared within his body earlier was definitely the result of the little girl's talismans. However, he didn't have the time to ask her about it now, because there was a 5th-rank dark beast by his side. As he sensed the surging profound energy within his body, Xianxia gazed at the colossal python king while twisting his neck, and then he let out a burst of savage laughter. After that, his right leg stomped on the ground, allowing his figure to charge out explosively, and his right fist whistled through the air as it smashed towards the colossal python king's head. When it noticed Xianxia was taking the initiative to attack it again, the colossal python king seemed to have become enraged as well, and its figure shook before its enormous tail swept once more towards Xianxia. Xianxia's eyes focused when he saw the tail sweep over, but he wasn't prepared to dodge this time. The light golden profound energy within his body surged towards his right fist, and then he let out a fierce shout as his fist smashed forcefully towards the Python King's tail. With the boost from the mysterious talisman and the light golden profound energy, the veins on Xianxia's arm bulged like numerous worms, and a light golden glow flashed into appearance on his fist. Everywhere his fist passed, numerous sharp sounds of the air being torn apart resounded, and it was extremely shocking. Bang! The fist and tail collided, causing a muffled bang to resound. Yang Yi took quite a few steps back, whereas the Python King's tail was blasted flying beneath the force of Yang Ye's punch. It wasn't just that. The spot where Yang Ye's fist descended onto the tail had sunken completely, and it obviously displayed the force contained within Yang Ye's attack. Yang Yi was instantly delighted when he noticed this punch of his had blasted the Python King's tail backward, and his eyes flickered with a glow of excitement. The profound energy within his body surged as he charged forward once more, and then his fist descended towards the Python King like a rainstorm. As she watched Yang Yi attack the colossal Python King to the point it repeatedly retreated, a wisp of shock flashed in the eyes of Bauer, who stood at the side, and she patted her chest as she said in a light voice, "My mid-grade strength talisman is merely able to double his strength, but when combined with his golden profound energy, it has at least improved his strength by almost 5 times. Grandpa was right. Amongst the profound energy of the 5 elements, the offensive ability of golden profound energy is the most formidable." Yang Yi grew more and more excited the more he fought. Every single time the Python King's tail collided with him, the enormous force carried by it would cause a wave of vibrations to spread throughout his body. Luckily, he sensed that a strand of strange energy was ceaselessly repairing the internal injuries within his body. Otherwise, he would have fallen to the ground a long time ago. Bang! The man and Python were in a deadlock for a long time. Suddenly, Yang Yi accurately captured a gap in its defenses, and he flashed over to smash a ferocious punch onto the Python King's head. The colossal Python King wailed, and its body trembled violently. When he saw this, Yang Yi sped up his attacks towards the Python King's head, and it wasn't long before the colossal Python King stopped moving. Huff! When he saw the colossal Python King fall to the ground, Yang Yi fell to the ground as well, and he sat there while gasping for breath. Earlier, he'd been struck a few times by the Python King's tail, and he didn't feel anything at the time. Yet now, that sort of feeling of pain and exhaustion surged over and assaulted him like tidewater, causing him to be unable to rouse a single shred of strength. Meanwhile, Bauer ran over to the colossal Python King's side before suddenly kicking its body that lay on the ground, and she cursed while she kicked. "Chase Bauer! Chase Bauer! Now you're dead!" "Huh? Just you wait. Bauer will refine you." As she spoke, she withdrew a white jade bottle from her small pouch and pointed it at the colossal Python King. As soon as the stopper was removed, a strand of suction force surged out explosively from within it, and then the enormous body of the colossal Python King transformed into a black that surged into the white jade bottle. Yang Yi was dumbstruck when he witnessed this scene. He rubbed his eyes and focused his gaze over, and he noticed the python kind had really vanished. Moreover, if it wasn't for the pool of blood that still remained, he might have thought that he was fighting the air earlier. After she put the white jade bottle away, Bauer walked over to Yang Ye's side, and then withdrew a green-colored talisman from her pouch and slapped it onto Yang Yi. As soon as it was slapped onto his body, the talisman instantly transformed into a green glow that surged into Yang Ye's body. After that, a strand of strange energy once again circulated swiftly within his body just like it had done before this, and it wasn't long before Yang Ye's exhaustion from before had vanished once more. Are you a talisman master?" Yang Yi gazed at Bauer, who was sizing him up carefully, and he asked in a light voice. A wisp of a proud expression suffused the corners of Bauer's mouth when she heard this. "Of course, I'm a genius. The one and only super genius in the sword sect that's a grade 5 talisman master at the age of 14. What do you think? Aren't I amazing?" Yang Yi took a deep breath when he heard Bauer's admission, and he didn't conceal the shock on his face at all. Even though his strength was weak, he still possessed some knowledge, so he naturally knew what a talisman master was. Talisman masters possessed extremely distinguished statuses in the Southern Territory because the things created by talisman masters were able to make countless profounders go mad over them. For example, those talismans from before were able to instantly improve one's combat strength, and it was even without any side effects at all. Such a talisman could protect one's life in a crisis. It wasn't just talismans. Talisman masters were also able to inscribe those strange talisman markings onto weapons or armor. If a weapon were inscribed by a talisman master, then this weapon's might would improve greatly, and its value would instantly rise by more than 10 times. Moreover, talismans and inscribing treasures were merely the tip of the iceberg. According to legend, talisman masters were even able to inscribe techniques. That meant they were able to inscribe all sorts of profound techniques onto weapons and armor. So long as a profounder utilized profound energy to activate these techniques, then the inscribed technique would automatically activate. Of course, Xianxia had never seen such a treasure. Not only had he never seen such a treasure, but Xianxia had also only seen a single talisman master in his life, and it was this little girl standing before him. The reason talisman masters possessed distinguished statuses was related to an extremely important reason. Talisman masters were extraordinarily scarce. He wasn't sure about other places, but in any case, there wasn't a single talisman master amongst Southpace City's population of almost 1 million people. Yet now, he'd actually encountered one, and he'd even utilized many of those precious talismans. When he thought up to here, Xianxia felt slightly pained in his heart because if he were able to sell those talismans, then any one of them would be sufficient for him to live on for his entire lifetime. Why didn't you run just now? Bauer gazed at Xianxia and asked in an extremely serious manner. What do you mean? Xianxia was stunned. I'm talking about just now. You're clearly so weak. So why didn't you run and went to fight that little snake instead? Bauer asked once more, and her little face seemed to be extremely serious. If I ran, then you would be in its belly. Xianxia joked. At that time, he'd thought about fleeing, but the actions of this little girl before him had moved him. So, if he ran at that time, then even he himself would really look down on himself. Bauer gazed at Xianxia for a short while before she said with a smile, in the past, numerous people tried to curry favor with me, but I knew that they all had objectives of their own, or they intended to curry favor with Grandpa. But you're different, you don't know Bauer's identity, yet you still risked your life to save me. Let's be friends. I'm Bauer. What about you? Xianxia. Xianxia smiled as well. The little girl before him was around the age of his younger sister, and they were similarly cute. He sincerely had a favorable impression of her. Xianxia seemed to have thought of something, and he asked, Right, aren't all talisman masters extremely formidable? Why are you? Bauer's little face flushed red when she heard this, and she blushed for a moment before she said, Even though I'm at the 8th rank of the mortal realm and possess the profound energy of the 5 elements as well, Bauer's profound energy is of the wood element, and it possesses the weakest combat strength. Moreover, Bauer hasn't fought anyone in the past. So, Bauer doesn't know how to fight at all. As soon as she finished speaking, her little face turned even redder. Xianxia was completely stunned when he heard Bauer, the 8th rank of the mortal realm. She's only 14 years old. When he thought up to here, Xianxia's scalp felt slightly numb. This natural talent is truly monstrous to the extreme. However, when he heard Bauer actually didn't know how to fight, Xianxia's expression was slightly strange. She possesses such heaven-defying natural talent, yet actually doesn't know how to fight. When she noticed Xianxia's strange expression, Bauer glared fiercely at him, and then she changed the topic and said, Right, your 5-element profound energy is of the gold element. Logically speaking, you ought to cultivate extremely quickly. Why are you only at the 4th rank of the mortal realm? She intended to frustrate Xianxia. 5-element profound energy? Gold profound energy. Xianxia was still slightly dazed because he'd never heard of these terms in the past. Bauer didn't explain, and she asked instead. You know that talisman masters possess distinguished statuses, right? Xianxia nodded and said, Extremely distinguished. In the past, I've only heard of them yet never seen one. I don't think one has ever been born from our Southpace city. The reason talisman masters are distinguished is that geniuses that possess 5-element profound energy are required to become talisman masters, whereas one genius with 5-element profound energy only appears amongst at least a few million people. A thing is valued if it's rare. So, Talisman masters are extremely distinguished in the Southern Territory. Understand? Bauer explained patiently. You're saying that my profound energy is a type of 5-element profound energy? Xianxia's eyes lit up. The identity of a talisman master was much more distinguished than being an outer court disciple of the sword sect. If he became a talisman master, then even the governor of Southpace City would have to be respectful and reverent to him, let alone the Liu clan. Bauer nodded and said, "It should be. The gold element profound energy amongst the 5-element profound energy is gold in color, whereas your profound energy is gold in color. So, it should be you should be able to become a talisman master. Moreover, gold element profound energy is the strongest amongst the profound energy of the 5 elements." Bauer never expected that Bauer would encounter one. When he heard this, Xianxia was first delighted, and then he frowned and calmed down. Gold element profound energy was gold in color, yet his was light gold. Moreover, it was converted into a light gold color by the tiny vortex. Is my profound energy really a type of 5-element profound energy? Bauer, you said only geniuses with 5-element profound energy can become talisman masters. Why is that? Xianxia asked with a low voice. Because only the profound energy of the 5 elements can continue existing in the air. Bauer explained. After ordinary profound energy leaves the body, it will disperse completely without a special cultivation technique to maintain it. On the other hand, this wouldn't happen to 5-element profound energy. They can exist in air, and so long as they aren't destroyed by others, then they can continue to exist forever. Understand? Xianxia pondered deeply for a moment upon hearing this, and then he utilized the profound energy in his body and his finger as a brush to lightly scratch a rock on the ground. Instantly, a golden line appeared on the rock. Xianxia was delighted when he saw this, and then he continued. In next to no time, a golden character appeared on the rock. After that, he waited silently for a moment, and that character still remained on that rock after a while, causing an overjoyed expression to surge up onto his face. He wasn't sure if he possessed one of the 5-element profound energies, yet he was sure that his profound energy conformed to the conditions to become a talisman master. When she saw Xianxia's excited expression, Bauer hesitated for a moment. Yet when she recalled that scene from before when Xianxia charged towards the colossal Python King, she stopped hesitating, and she stretched out her hand into her pouch to withdraw a scroll before passing it over to Xianxia. She said, "Little laborer, this scroll is the 5-element talisman marking technique. It's unlike other 5-element talisman marking techniques because my grandpa's experiences are recorded within it. I basically already know all of it. Now, I'm giving it to you, and you can't give it to anyone else, understand?" As she finished speaking, Bauer's face seemed to be slightly solemn. Xianxia was moved when he heard this, and he hesitated on whether he should take the scroll. He looked at Bauer and said seriously, "Thank you. Don't worry, I won't give it to anyone. This was a fortuitous encounter to become a talisman master, and he didn't want to give it up." Bauer nodded, and then she said in a light voice, "Grandpa has gone to Grand Qin Empire, so I can't bring you back to the Talisman Peak. Once Grandpa returns, I'll ask him to have a look at your natural talent to become a talisman master, and if it's good, then Bauer will make him take you as a disciple. It's fine even if your natural talent isn't good. At that time you can follow by Bauer's side. Bauer is extremely formidable as well." Xianxia was slightly touched in his heart when he heard her. Not only had Bauer given him that precious 5-element talisman marking technique, but she was even prepared to introduce him to her grandfather. This little girl standing before him had really taken him to be her friend. "Little laborer, you must remember that you can't neglect the improvement of your cultivation just because you can become a talisman master. After all, as the profound energy within your body becomes more condensed, the effects of the talismans you create will rise alongside it. Moreover, creating a talisman requires the exhaustion of a great deal of profound energy. With the amount of profound energy stored within your body now, you'll at most be able to create only a few talismans. Understand?" Bauer spoke seriously. Xianxia nodded and said, "I know that. My target is to become an inner court disciple. Even though the profession of talisman master was extremely distinguished, he'd never given up on becoming a formidable profounder because he would only be able to protect his mother and younger sister better with formidable strength. As for being a talisman master, it was still a bit too far away from him. And inner court disciple? That's good as well. Bauer smiled, and then she raised her head to determine the time of day. When she noticed it was already late, she thought for a moment before she withdrew 2 white jade bottles and a talisman brush from her tiny pouch and said, "This is the blood essence of a dark beast and some spirit herb sap. You can practice according to the 5-element talisman marking technique first. I'll come play with you soon. I'm leaving first." As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her small hands at Xianxia before placing them behind her back, and then she hopped her way towards the entrance of the gorge. As he watched Bauer figure vanish at the entrance to the gorge, Xianxia smiled before he opened up the scroll in his hand. The 5-element talisman marking technique, the Tao of talismans. After he returned to Labor Peak from Cool Breeze Gorge, Xianxia arrived at the canteen. As soon as he entered it, Xianxia noticed that the gazes of half the people here had descended onto him. Some of these labor disciples revealed kind smiles, while the others seemed to be laughing at his misfortune. Xianxia nodded to those labor disciples that revealed kind smiles, and he was just about to get some food when a cold shout resounded from behind him. "Xianxia! Stop right there!" Xianxia frowned when he heard this. This voice was extremely familiar to him, and it was the voice of Manager Su. He knew that his troubles had arrived. Xianxia turned around to look at Manager Su. Manager Su was around 40+ years old, had a fat figure, and an extremely chubby face. If one was slightly far away from Manager Su, then one would probably even be unable to see his eyes. Manager Su wore broad clothes from Labor Peak, yet it was still tight against his flesh, and both his shoulders and back were rosy. In the Sword Sect, Manager Su had another nickname, and it was the Skinner Su. Because once any disciple offended him, then he would at least skin a layer of that disciple's skin. Moreover, Du Xiu's group of 3 that had cold smiles on the corners of their mouths stood by Manager Su's side. When they saw Manager Su's group of 4, some of the labor disciples in the canteen revealed deep fear and resentment in their eyes because these 4 people before them had constantly exploited them. Yet they only dared to feel angry in their hearts and didn't dare speak a word of it. "I knew it. Xianxia bashed Du Xiu up, so how could Skinner Su let him off? Now Xianxia's dead." Yeah, a long time ago someone made a stand against Skinner Su, and he was bashed to death on the spot by all 4 of them. Alas, why didn't Xianxia just exercise some forbearance on that day? Young people really are impulsive. This sort of impulsiveness isn't good. Shoo! Keep quiet. Otherwise, if Skinner Su hears you, then you'll definitely get a good whipping. Manager Su's group of 4 walked over towards Xianxia, and when he arrived before Xianxia, a whip had suddenly appeared in Manager Su's hand. As he gazed at Xianxia, who had a calm expression, Manager Su revealed a savage smile and said, "Xianxia, a person has to be able to come to terms with reality. You were once an outer court disciple, yet you aren't one any longer. Since you've arrived at my territory, then you have to obey my rules. Since you hit my nephew, then tell me, how should we resolve this matter? Uncle, why waste your breath on him? Kill him." Meanwhile, Du Xiu looked at Xianxia from the side and spoke in a ruthless tone. He could be said to have completely lost all face that day, and he was unable to swallow that humiliation. Xianxia glanced coldly at Du Xiu, and then he gazed at Manager Su before he said, "Tell me, how should it be resolved?" Manager Su suddenly started laughing when he heard this, and then he withdrew an envelope from behind his clothes at his chest. And the opening of the envelope had already been torn. Obviously, it had already been read. Manager Su withdrew the letter within it, and then he said with a smile, "Xianxia, I heard you have a younger sister that's only a little over 10 years old? She seems to not be married yet. So what do you think of me? I love young girls like this. Ask your younger sister to be my concubine, and then kneel down and admit your mistakes to Du Xiu." Suddenly, Manager Su's voice stopped abruptly because an enormous fist was already smashing down towards him. When he heard Manager Su disrespect and humiliate his younger sister, Xiangxia's expression suddenly became savage, and then he directly smashed his fist over. His younger sister and mother were his reverse scales, and he wouldn't tolerate any offense against them. Bang! Manager Su had never expected that Yang Yi would suddenly make a move against him, and he was immediately caught off guard. Thus, his face had an intimate encounter with Yang Ye's fist. A shrill cry resounded as his figure fell to the ground, and then fresh blood flowed from both his mouth and nose. Yang Yi didn't stop, and his figure charged swiftly to instantly arrive before Manager Su. He avoided the whip in Manager Su's hand before he swung his fist fiercely at Manager Su's body. "You piece of trash! Are you even worthy of my younger sister? I'll fucking kill you!" Yang Yi had a savage expression as he took Manager Su's whip and started whipping Manager Su in a frenzied manner. Yang Yi, you're dead. How dare you hit me? Stop. Lord Yang. Don't hit me anymore, don't hit me anymore. I was wrong. When they heard Manager Su's shrill cries, everyone within the canteen was stunned. They'd never imagined that Yang Yi would actually dare to hit Skinner Su. After all, Skinner Su was a manager appointed by the Sword Sect. But in next to no time, all the labor disciples stopped thinking about this because Yang Yi was doing something they usually didn't dare to do. Numerous labor disciples in the canteen had clenched their fists tightly, and they didn't conceal the excitement in their eyes at all. "Yang Yi, quickly let go of my uncle. Otherwise, you're dead." Meanwhile, Du Xiu had recovered from his shock, and he intended to stop Yang Yi. Yet he was also afraid of Yang Ye's strength, so he could only shout furiously from the side. Yang Yi paid no attention to Du Xiu, and he exerted even more strength instead while whipping Manager Su's body over and over again. In just a short while, Manager Su had at least suffered no less than 100 strikes of the whip, and his fat body was covered in bloodstains. It was a rather terrifying sight. In Yang Ye's opinion, if one bullied him, then perhaps he would exercise forbearance. However, if someone dared to touch his family, then he wouldn't hesitate to transform into a demon. Manager Su, who lay before him, had actually dared to try to obtain Yang Ye's younger sister, and this was absolutely not something he could tolerate. Manager Su's shrill cries resounded in the canteen, and besides Du Xiu's group, all the other labor disciples grew even more excited as they heard these cries. At this moment, all of them felt great satisfaction. Manager Su had frequently exploited them. Not only did he hold back their wages, but he'd even frequently whipped any labor disciple that disobeyed him in the slightest. Amongst the few thousands of labor disciples on Labor Peak, at least over 90% of them had been cruelly beaten by Skinner Su. "Stay your hand." Right at this moment, an old man that wore clear white robe appeared within the canteen, and his voice contained a trace of profound energy that shook the ears of everyone here to the point of droning. When he heard this cold grunt, Yang Ye's heart shook, and when he turned around and saw the old man, a wisp of a complicated expression flashed past Yang Ye's eyes. He took a deep breath and tossed the whip aside, and then he paid no attention to Manager Su that was on the verge of death as he walked over to stand before the old man. He bowed deeply to the old man and said, "Elder Chen." This old man before him was that elder that took him as an outer court disciple in Southpace City that day, and it was this old man that had changed his fate. If it wasn't for the warning this old man had given the Liu clan that day in Southpace City, then it was very likely that his younger sister and mother would have fallen into the Liu clan's hands. Even though he was reduced to a labor disciple by this old man as well, he didn't hold even a bit of resentment towards the old man. Conversely, feelings of gratefulness towards this old man had always existed in his heart. This old man before him was one of the reasons he worked so hard as well. Because when he was unable to absorb any profound energy after a year, this old man before him was ridiculed by the other outer court elders as well. He wanted to prove to everyone within the Sword Sect that he, Yang Yi, wasn't a piece of trash. When he saw Yang Yi, a wisp of a complicated expression flashed past Elder Chen's eyes. He was extremely clearly aware of Yang Ye's natural talent. However, for some unknown reason, Yang Yi was actually unable to absorb any profound energy after a year, and he hadn't been able to become a profounder even after a year. So, Elder Chen had no choice but to reduce Yang Yi to a labor disciple. Now, when he met Yang Yi again, he had slightly complicated feelings in his heart as well. Meanwhile, Du Qiu knelt before Elder Chen with a thump, and then he pointed at Yang Yi and said, "Elder Chen, you have to uphold justice for us. First, Yang Yi heavily injured me, then asked me to do his work for him. My uncle came to speak reasonably with him, yet who would have expected that my uncle would be heavily injured as well? Elder Chen, you have to uphold justice for my uncle and me." Yang Yi frowned when he heard Du Qiu turn the truth upside down, but he didn't speak. On the other hand, the faces of those labor disciples at the side were covered in rage, and they felt that Du Qiu was simply shameless to the extreme for turning the truth upside down. Elder Chen glanced at Manager Su, who lay on the ground while seeming to be on his last breath. Suddenly, a wisp of surprise appeared in Elder Chen's eyes, and then he looked at Yang Yi. A strand of divine sense enveloped down towards Yang Yi, and then after a while, Elder Chen's eyes lit up as he said, You're already at the 4th rank of the mortal realm?" Yang Yi nodded when he heard this, and then the profound energy within his body surged. With a flip of his palm, a light golden color flickered into appearance on his palm. "Elder Chen, I'm already able to absorb profound energy." When he spoke these words, Yang Ye's heart suddenly relaxed. In the past, for the sake of not disappointing this old man who stood before him, he'd cultivated desperately. However, he'd still disappointed the old man in the end. Now, he was able to absorb profound energy, and the person he wanted to tell this to the most was this old man. When he saw the light golden color emanated from Yang Ye's palm, Elder Chen's eyes opened wide as if he'd seen something extraordinary, and then his figure flashed to arrive before Yang Yi. He stared at Yang Yi as he said, Your profound energy is gold in color?" As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Chen's hands couldn't help but clench together tightly. When he noticed Elder Chen's solemn expression, Yang Yi hesitated for a moment before he nodded. Perhaps his profound energy wasn't of the gold element, but it ought to not be inferior to gold element profound energy. "Ha ha!" Elder Chen suddenly started roaring with laughter when he saw Yang Yi nod, and he laughed for a moment before he felt that it was inappropriate. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and patted Yang Yi on the shoulder with his right hand before he said, "Good, very good, extremely good. Only a single genius with profound energy of the 5 elements would appear amongst a few million of people. Yet Yang Yi didn't just possess profound energy of the 5 elements, it was even the strongest amongst the profound energy of the 5 elements, gold element profound energy. So, how could he not be excited? When he heard Elder Chen, the nearby Du Qiu suddenly had a bad premonition. However, when he saw Manager Su, who lay on the ground while seeming to be on his last breath, Du Qiu took a deep breath, and then he summoned the courage to go before Elder Chen and kneel down before he said, "Elder Chen, please uphold justice for us." Elder Chen frowned when he heard this. He glanced coldly at Du Qiu before he turned around to look at the others in the surroundings, and then he said, "Tell me the sequence of events. Don't worry, no one can threaten all of you with me here. However, if you conceal anything, then don't blame me for showing no mercy." Du Qiu's heart jerked when he heard this, and his countenance turned ghastly pale. He knew that this elder before him intended to stand on Yang Ye's side. How could all the labor disciples dare conceal anything? They immediately described everything that occurred before this. Moreover, some labor disciples recalled Elder Chen's attitude towards Yang Yi just now, and they knew that it might be a chance to topple Manager Su. So, they immediately spoke of everything Manager Su had done in the past, and it was even to the extent that some exaggerated a little bit. When they heard all of these labor disciples, the countenance of Du Qiu's group of 3 turned terrifyingly deathly pale while their bodies shivered. They knew that they were finished this time. Yang Yi glanced indifferently at the 3 of them before walking to Manager Su's side, and he took the envelope and letter in Manager Su's possession before placing it behind his clothes near his chest. After he listened to everyone, Elder Chen's expression turned gloomy, and he looked at Du Qiu that had already collapsed to the ground before he said coldly, "I never expected this. I truly never expected this." All the outer court elders and disciples were busy cultivating, so no one paid any attention to the labor peak. Yet I never expected that the labor peak would have actually fallen to this pair of uncle and nephew. Both of you really extremely audacious. Please spare our lives, elder. Please spare our lives, elder. Du Xiu's group of 3 immediately knelt before Elder Chen and begged for mercy. Please spare our lives, elder. We don't dare to do it again, we won't dare to do it again. At this moment, Du Xiu's group of 3 were filled with regret, and they regretted offending Yang Yi. If they knew that Yang Yi was already a profounder, then no matter how bold they were, they wouldn't dare offend Yang Yi. Elder Chen grunted coldly, and he said in a cold voice, "From now onwards, Manager Su isn't the manager of the labor peak any longer. All 4 of you will head to Star or Mountain to mine for 10 years, and everything obtained from this mining will be handed over to the sect. After those 10 years, you'll be expelled from the Sword Sect and prohibited from entering the Sword Sect again." As soon as he finished speaking, he nodded to Yang Yi that had been silent all this time, and then he stretched out his hand to grab Yang Ye's shoulder. After that, Elder Chen's figure flashed, and the 2 of them had vanished from the canteen. When they heard Elder Chen, all the nearby labor disciples instantly started cheering, whereas Du Xiu's group of 3 directly fainted because the 4 of them would have to work like slaves for the Sword Sect for 10 years. The training grounds. Yang Yi and Elder Chen walked side by side. Even though it was already night, but under the illumination of the moonlight stones in the surroundings, the training grounds were bright as day. Suddenly, Elder Chen stopped and looked at Yang Yi before he said, "Yang Yi, did you ever feel resentment towards me when I reduced you to a labor disciple that day?" Yang Yi shook his head and said, "Elder Chen, if it wasn't for you, then my younger sister and mother would have probably already fallen into the Lu clan's hands. I do have resentment in my heart, but it's only to my own self. At that time, I didn't live up to Elder Chen's expectations and caused Elder Chen to be ridiculed by others just like I had. It was I that disappointed Elder Chen." Yang Yi would never forget the scenes of those outer court elders ridiculing him and Elder Chen. When he was unable to become a profounder even after a year, those outer court elders and outer court disciples had given him a resounding nickname. Moreover, they even ridiculed Elder Chen by calling him old, unable to see properly, and said he'd brought back a piece of trash for the Sword Sect. It could be said that he was the laughingstock amongst the outer court disciples, and because of him, Elder Chen became the laughingstock amongst the outer court elders. When he heard Yang Yi, Elder Chen patted Yang Yi on the shoulder and said, "All right, all of that has already passed, and you don't have to make a fuss about it. I never imagined that you would actually possess profound energy of the 5 elements, and it would even be gold element profound energy. Come, let's head to the outer court peak now. I intend to reinstate your status as an outer court disciple. Let me see who dares call you a piece of trash now. Elder Chen, I want to participate in the outer court exam that's being held a month from now. I'll use my strength to tell them that I'm not a piece of trash, and Elder Chen's perception is the best in the Sword Sect." Yang Yi looked at Elder Chen as he spoke in an extremely serious manner. If he really possessed the profound energy of the 5 elements, then he might really follow Elder Chen to the outer court peak. But the problem was, did he possess gold element profound energy? He didn't want others to know of the secret that was the tiny vortex. Elder Chen was stunned when he heard this, and then he started laughing before he said, "Good. Good. You have ambition." The Sword Sect had 2 methods to recruit outer court disciples. The first method was that outer court elders could recruit any 3 disciples at will because all outer court elders had a quota of 3 outer court disciples. The second method was the outer court exam. This was the normal method the Sword Sect utilized to recruit disciples, and anyone that had attained the 6th rank of the mortal realm before the age of 17 had the qualifications to participate in this exam. The strength and status of outer court disciples chosen from the outer court exam were superior to the outer court disciples recruited by the outer court elders because the exam was extremely stringent. Not only did one have to possess a formidable strength, one also had to possess a formidable comprehension ability and natural talent. It could be said that the former was taking the back door while the later was becoming an outer court disciple by relying on one's own strength. So, the status of the former was far inferior to the latter in the Sword Sect. Elder Chen thought for a moment and then withdrew a small pouch from his pocket. He passed it to Yang Yi and said, It's very good that you have ambition. There are 10 energy stones and meridian shield pills here. The energy stones will allow you to quickly absorb profound energy, whereas meridian shield pills can protect your meridians from injury. As he gazed at the small pouch, Xianxia hesitated before he received it and said seriously, "Elder Chen, don't worry. I'll definitely not disappoint you this time." He didn't refuse Elder Chen's good intentions because he did indeed require cultivation resources now. Otherwise, with his current speed of cultivation, it would definitely be impossible for him to attain the 6th rank of the mortal realm before he was 17. Elder Chen smiled as he nodded, and then he said, "I believe that the speed of cultivation of someone that possesses the profound energy of the 5 elements is extremely swift. I don't know what the problem in your body was in the past, but it seems like there are no more problems now. Cultivate properly and strive to obtain the top 10 positions in the outer court exam, and allow those old fellows to see who the true piece of trash is." As he finished speaking, Elder Chen's voice carried a trace of anger. Even though he had a good temper, when he thought of looks on those outer court elders at that time, he was still slightly angry. "The first 10 positions?" Xianxia spoke in a low voice. "What? You aren't confident in your ability to obtain that?" Elder Chen spoke with a smile. Xianxia shook his head. How could he not be confident? His target wasn't to become an outer court disciple, and his true target was to become an inner court disciple. In the past, he didn't dare have extravagant hopes of becoming an inner court disciple, but now that he possessed that mysterious tiny vortex in his dantian and coupled with his own hard work, he believed that he would definitely be able to become an inner court disciple. Of course, I had to first become an outer court disciple before he had the qualifications to participate in the inner court exam. Xianxia pondered deeply for a moment, and then he said, "Elder Chen, I have something to ask of you." "What is it?" Elder Chen spoke with curiosity. Xianxia told Elder Chen about the Southpace city's Lu clan targeting his younger sister. Originally, he intended to rely on his own ability to deal with the Lu clan, yet now his strength was still insufficient and he still needed time. So, he could only entrust Elder Chen with taking care of it. Elder Chen went silent for a moment when he heard Xianxia, and then he said, "If I'm not wrong, that Lu Qingyu who recently joined the outer court is a disciple of the Lu clan, and that's the reason why the Lu clan dared to disregard my warning from that day and started to target your family again." Lu Qingyu. When he heard Xianxia repeat this name, Elder Chen's expression became slightly serious, and he said, "He's a disciple of the Lu clan that recently became an outer court disciple after attaining the 3rd position in the outer court exam. After cultivating for a single month, he was ranked at the 29th position on the outer court rankings. Supposedly, some inner court elders have already started to pay attention to him." 29th on the outer court rankings? Xianxia's expression became serious as well. The outer court rankings was a ranking of the strengths possessed by the outer court disciples in the sword sect. There were a few thousands of outer court disciples, and there were countless experts amongst them. Supposedly, the strengths of the experts on the top 10 positions of the outer court rankings were already on par with outer court elders. So, since Lu Qingyu was able to be ranked at the 29th position in a short period of a month, it was sufficient to display his natural talent and strength. "Don't worry, I'll make a trip to Southpace City," Elder Chen said. "That Lu Qingyu still isn't an inner court disciple now, and the Lu clan will still give me some face. However, if that Lu Qingyu passes through the inner court exam that's held in 3 months from now to become an inner court disciple, then at that time the Lu clan might not fear me at all." Xianxia bowed to Elder Chen when he heard this, and he said, "Thank you, Elder Chen." Xianxia knew that once Lu Qingyu became an inner court disciple, then the status of an outer court elder would be utterly insufficient to restrain him at all. At that time, with the cultivation resources of an inner court disciple, Lu Qingyu's strength would definitely improve even more swiftly, whereas the Lu clan would definitely act in an even more unbridled manner within Southpace City. If he wanted to make the Lu clan feel fearful, then he had to possess strength and an identity that was more formidable than Lu Qingyu. In other words, he only had 3 months of time now. If he was unable to surpass Lu Qingyu within 3 months of time, then the situation his mother and younger sister were in would be dangerous. "Kid, Since Lu Qingyu was able to ascend to the 29th position of the outer court rankings, it represents that he has become a first heaven realm expert. You must work hard, otherwise, not to mention protecting your family, even protecting your own life would be a problem. Elder Chen spoke a low voice. A first heaven realm expert. Yang Ye's pupils constricted while he clenched his fists tightly. It was common knowledge that the realm beneath the first heaven realm was the mortal realm. The mortal realm was divided into the first until 9th rank, and the first heaven realm was after the 9th rank of the mortal realm. There was an extremely enormous gap between experts at the mortal realm and the first heaven realm because even if everything else was disregarded, the first heaven profound energy barrier possessed by experts at the first heaven realm wasn't something that experts at the mortal realm could break through. The first heaven realm, huh? It looks like I have to work even harder. Yang Yi clenched his fists tightly while he revealed a firm expression. Elder Chen nodded with a smile when he noticed Yang Yi wasn't terrified by the first heaven realm. Besides Yang Ye's loyalty to his loved ones, the reason he'd given one of the 3 spots he possessed to Yang Yi was because of Yang Ye's firm nature. In the path towards the martial Tao, besides formidable natural talent, it required nature and disposition like Yang Ye's. After he bid his farewells to Elder Chen, it was already deep in the night. Yang Yi didn't continue cultivating in Cool Breeze Gorge, and he returned to his own room before taking out the 5-element talisman marking technique and studying it. If he were able to create talismans, then it would definitely be extremely helpful towards his strength. After all, the effects of those talismans were extraordinary. As he looked through the introduction of those talismans within the 5-element talisman marking technique, Yang Yi felt more and more shocked the more he read because the effects of some talismans were truly too formidable. For example, a talisman called the Spirit Gathering Talisman was actually capable of allowing others to swiftly absorb profound energy. Even though it only lasted for 4 hours, it was already extremely formidable. There was also a type of strength talisman that was capable of allowing one's strength to multiply a few times for 2 hours. Moreover, there were many others as well. After looking through it for a while, Yang Yi was finally unable to restrain himself, and he decided to create a talisman. He didn't choose those difficult talismans, and he chose the strength talisman instead. His way of thinking was good, but only when he started did Yang Yi notice that creating talismans was much more difficult than he'd imagined. However, Yang Yi wasn't discouraged, and he tried over and over again. In the next few days, because of Elder Chen, the new manager of the labor peak acted very wisely and didn't distribute any work to Yang Yi. So, Yang Yi had much more time, and every single day, he was either cultivating bitterly in Cool Breeze Gore or studying the talisman marking technique. On this day, while Yang Yi was studying the 5-element talisman marking technique in his room, a labor disciple arrived at Yang Ye's room. This labor disciple had a solemn expression and said, "Big brother Yang, there's something I must notify you of." "What is it?" Yang Yi was puzzled because he didn't know this person at all. Even though Du Xiu and the others were eliminated because of him and these labor disciples were usually very polite to him, he didn't have any relationship with these labor disciples. When he heard Yang Yi, that labor disciple hesitated for a moment before he said, "Big brother Yang, Du Xiu's cousin brother seems to be about to return." Because of Yang Yi, everyone within Labor Peak didn't suffer the oppression of Du Xiu any longer. So, all of these labor disciples had a good impression of Yang Yi, and they didn't wish that Yang Yi would suffer any mishaps. Du Xiu's cousin brother? Yang Yi frowned. He knew that Du Xiu's cousin brother was an outer court disciple. Could it be that he intends to come looking for trouble with me? The labor disciple nodded and said, "Big brother Yang, the others asked me to notify you that Du Xiu's cousin brother is supposedly already an expert at the 8th rank of the mortal realm. After he returns, if he finds out that Du Xiu and the others were sent to Star or Mountain because of you, then he'll definitely come looking for trouble with you. You have to mentally prepare yourself. The 8th rank of the mortal realm?" Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly, and he pondered deeply for a short moment. After that, he withdrew 50 gold coins and passed it to the labor disciple before him and said, "Thanks for all of your kind intentions. I'll be careful. This is 50 gold coins. Don't refuse it and take it. If there's any other important information next time, then you can come notify me about it." There were a few thousand disciples on Labor Peak, and they were scattered all around the mountain. So, they were able to hear many things every single day. It could be said that these Labor disciples were in possession of a large amount of information, and if they became his eyes and ears, then it would absolutely be an enormous help to him. After he received the 50 gold coins, the Labor disciple said with excitement, "Don't worry, big brother Yang. If there's any news related to you in the future or any important information, we'll definitely notify you at the first possible moment." As soon as he finished speaking, he left the room. Xianxia's eyes narrowed after he saw the Labor disciple leave the room, and he said in a low voice, "The 8th rank of the mortal realm. I'm only at the 4th rank of the mortal realm now. Looks like I have to continue working hard." Half a month later. Pop, pop, pop. Cool breeze gorge. A young man in green clothes stood on an enormous rock while holding a tree branch that was around a meter long and thick like an index finger while ceaselessly stabbing it forward, flicking it diagonally, slashing vertically, and slicing horizontally. Every single time the young man swung the branch, it would cause a light pop from the air being torn apart to resound. Moreover, as the young man increased the speed of these actions, the light sounds of the air being torn apart started to resound like firecrackers on the enormous rock. At a certain point in time, the young man's eyes focused before he tossed the branch in his hand towards a large tree in the distance. The branch was extremely swift, and everywhere it passed, numerous light sounds of the air being torn apart resounded without end. The brand had practically traversed a distance of over 10 meters within the time of 2 breaths to arrive before the large tree. Bang! The branch penetrated through the lower parts of the tree's trunk that required 3 people holding hands together to embrace it. After that, it penetrated through a second tree, and when it successively penetrated through 5 trees, the branch finally stopped in the 6th tree. As he looked at the small holes on those trees, the young man said in a low voice, "With the energy stones and meridian shield pills Elder Chen gave me and coupled with the ceaseless tempering of my light golden profound energy, the strength of my body is countless times stronger than before. It's just a pity that I've completely consumed all 10 energy stones and the meridian shield pills." The young man was naturally Xianxia. In this half a month of time, amongst the 24 hours within a day, he'd practically spent 20 hours on cultivating. Under such hard work, he hadn't just improved his cultivation to the 6th rank of the mortal realm, even his basic sword technique from the sword sect had been cultivated to perfection. The sword sect's basic sword technique wasn't anything rare, and every single outer court disciple would get one. Besides Xianxia, practically no outer court disciple within the sword sect would cultivate such a common technique. After all, no matter how formidable one's basic sword technique was, how could it compare to those sword techniques that were ranked? In the past, Xianxia had such thoughts as well. However, after he was reduced to a labor disciple, he had no choice and could only choose to cultivate in the basic sword technique. After cultivating in it for 2 years and along with the ceaseless strengthening of his cultivation and physical strength, he'd become more and more skilled in the basic sword technique, and Xianxia felt that this sword technique seemed to be not as useless as everyone thought. This sword technique was a technique that contained simple moves like stabbing, slashing, sweeping, chopping, and upward slashes. However, under his ceaseless practice throughout these 2 years of time, these simple moves had already become not so simple. Just like that scene from before, every single swing of his sword caused a light sound of the air being torn apart. This sort of effect was something that even some yellow rank sword techniques within the sword sect were unable to attain. So, Xianxia decided to continue practicing it diligently as he wanted to see where the limits of the basic sword technique were. Xianxia raised his head to gaze at the sky to determine the time. When he noticed it was high noon, Xianxia patted his hands together and said in a low voice, "I must successfully craft a strength talisman today." Within the 5-element talisman marking technique Bauer gave him, the method of crafting the strength talisman wasn't very complicated. After all, it was only a basic talisman. However, to a newbie like Xianxia that had just come into contact with talismans and didn't possess the guidance of anyone, it was already extremely complicated. In this half a month of time, he hadn't succeeded a single time, and the main reason was that he'd been too impatient at the beginning. With the experiences derived from his failures during this time, Xianxia had become smarter. In the last week, he hadn't tried to draw the strength talisman, and he'd studied the strength talisman for a week instead. He'd forcefully committed to memory all the pathways and especially important parts of the strength talisman. Xianxia recalled all the details of the strength talisman. After a short while, Xianxia sat cross-legged on the enormous rock and withdrew the talisman paper and talisman brush Bauer had given him. After that, he withdrew the dark beast blood and spirit herb sap Bauer gave him. Once he'd prepared everything, Xianxia moved from a sitting position to a crawling position instead, and then he held his breath in concentration. After a short while, the light golden profound energy within his body slowly poured into the talisman brush, and then he started to draw according to the method of crafting a strength talisman within his mind. As he held the talisman brush, Xianxia carefully moved it on the talisman paper, and traces of light golden profound energy from within his body flowed into the talisman paper via the talisman brush. After numerous lines of light golden profound energy entered the talisman paper, they instantly started crawling about like numerous little worms. When he saw this, Xianxia hurriedly utilized the talisman brush to guide them to form all sorts of strange shapes. During this entire process, Xianxia didn't even dare breathe heavily, and he was fully concentrated on slowly guiding the talisman brush on the talisman paper. After 15 minutes of this, a light golden shape of a flame gradually appeared on the talisman paper, and after another 15 minutes, Xianxia lifted the brush while a light golden flame had appeared on the talisman paper. Xianxia took a deep breath when he saw the flame had taken form, and his expression relaxed. Of course, this wasn't the end because he'd only finished the first step, and there was another step, a step that was of utmost importance. Imbuing spirit into the talisman. The process of imbuing spirit into the talisman was to imbue the spirit herb sap and dark beast blood into the talisman paper, and utilize the two of them combined with the energy of the heavens and the earth to allow the talisman to possess spirit. This step was the most difficult, and he'd failed once a month ago, because he had to draw the flame once more while utilizing the dark beast blood, spirit herb sap, and his own light golden profound energy at the same time. If he failed during this entire process, then the entire talisman would be a failure. Xianxia took a deep breath and tried to make himself calm down. After a short moment, he picked up a white jade bottle and poured out a drop of liquid from it onto the talisman. Then he quickly picked up another white jade bottle, poured out a drop of dark beast blood. Once the 2 drops of liquid had dropped onto the talisman, Xianxia hurriedly circulated the profound energy within his body and forcefully mixed the 2 drops of liquid. The 2 drops of liquid mixed without any difficulty under the effect of Xianxia's light golden profound energy. And then Xianxia hurriedly held the talisman brush and guided the liquid according to the pathways of the flame. This process was said to be the most difficult because Xianxia had to utilize his profound energy to envelop the 2 drops of liquid during this entire process. And this carried extremely strict requirements towards one's control of soul energy and profound energy. During this entire process, the slightest bit of carelessness or the inability to completely imbue the talisman with spirit in one go would cause the crafting of the talisman to fail. Because once the dark beast blood and spirit herb sap weren't enveloped by profound energy, then they would instantly separate. Once the 2 of them separated, the flame on the entire talisman would definitely be thrown into disorder. At that time, everything Xianxia had accomplished before this would be in vain. Numerous droplets of cold sweat ceaselessly appeared on his forehead. Yet Xianxia didn't even dare blink as he was deeply afraid that his drawing would become slanted while he blinked. Just like this, after drawing carefully for around 30 minutes, a smile gradually appeared on Xianxia's face, and the excitement in his eyes was impossible to conceal. After another 15 minutes, Xianxia suddenly raised his brush. As soon as the brush left the talisman paper, the flame on the talisman paper instantly emanated a light golden flaming glow just like a real flame, and the entire flame was lifelike and seemed real as it resided on the talisman paper. I've finally succeeded. I've finally succeeded. I, Xianxia, am a grade 1 talisman master as well. Ha ha ha. As he gazed at the flame on the talisman paper, Xianxia couldn't help but roar excitedly with laughter. Based on the 5-element talisman marking technique that Bauer gave him, Xianxia possessed some basic information about talisman masters. Talisman masters were just like profounders, and they were divided by realms as well. The first grade to the fifth grade were grades related to inscribing talismans, and it was the basic crafting of talismans. The realms after grade 5 Talisman Master was Spirit Talisman Master, Earth Talisman Master, Heaven Talisman Master, Immortal Talisman Master, and Divine Talisman Master. The first 5 grades were related to inscribing talismans, and one gained a grade for every talisman one could successfully craft. If one was able to craft 5 basic talismans and achieve mastery of all 5 elements, then one had attained the 5th grade. Xianxia had successfully crafted a strength talisman now, so he could be considered as a grade 1 talisman master. Xianxia suppressed the excitement in his heart and picked up the strength talisman on the rock. He observed it for some time before a wisp of surprise appeared in his eyes, and he said in a low voice, "Talismans are divided into the defective grade, low grade, mid-grade, high grade, and top grade. This strength talisman of mine caused the flame to seem like it's alive, and it ought to be considered a high-grade talisman. However, didn't the scroll say that the possibility of crafting a high-grade talisman is extremely low? Could it be that it's because of my light golden profound energy?" Xianxia found out from the introduction within the 5-element talisman marking technique that talismans were divided by grades as well, and talismans of different grades had different effects as well. For example, a low-grade strength talisman was at most capable of increasing the user's strength by 50%. A mid-grade strength talisman increased it by around 100%, whereas a high-grade talisman was able to increase it by 300%. As for a top-grade strength talisman, it was able to increase the user's strength by 6 or 7 times. Even though the effects of high-grade and top-grade talismans were shocking, the difficulty of crafting them was extremely great as well. The possibility of successfully crafting a high-grade talisman was extraordinarily low, so he'd never expected that this talisman of his would actually be at the top grade. Could it be that I'm really an extraordinary genius? Xianxia was bewildered. Looks like I have to ask Bauer about it in the future. Xianxia stopped thinking about this problem. He gazed at the strength talisman in his hand while the corners of his mouth raised slightly to form a wisp of a strange smile. If I fight someone in the future, then under the circumstances there isn't much of a gap in our strength, I'll definitely be able to make my opponent die a grievous death if I suddenly slapped a talisman on myself. When he thought up to here, the smile on the corners of Xianxia's mouth grew wider, and he smiled with slight complacency. After a short moment, he carefully put away the strength talisman before walking towards the exit of Cool Breeze Gorge. After he left Cool Breeze Gorge, Xianxia arrived at the training grounds. As soon as he arrived here, he was stopped by a disciple in green clothes. This young man was around 17 or 18 years old, and there was a tiny outer inscribed on the left shoulder of his green clothes. This was the symbol of an outer court disciple. As he gazed at this green-clothed young man that revealed killing intent towards him, Xianxia knew that this person before him was probably Du Xiu's cousin brother, Duan Jun, who had attained the 8th rank of the mortal realm. When they saw Xianxia being stopped by Duan Jun, some of the nearby labor disciples instantly shook their heads and sighed. Because of Xianxia, all the labor disciples on Labor Peak weren't bullied by Du Xiu and the others any longer, so they had a good impression of Xianxia. Now, Du Xiu's cousin brother had returned from the mortal world, so the consequences Xianxia faced were obvious. Duan Jun gazed at Xianxia as well while his eyes flickered with ghastly and cold-killing intent. When he returned here from the mortal world today, he noticed that Du Xiu and Manager Su had actually been sent to Star or Mountain, and the culprit was actually this labor disciple who was standing before him. After all the labor disciples of the Sword Sect and even some outer court disciples were clearly aware that Du Xiu was his cousin brother, and Manager Su was his subordinate. One had to consider the status of the master before beating a dog, and this person before him had slapped him on the face without disguising it at all. Moreover, most importantly, Du Xiu and Manager Su had to give over 10,000 gold coins to him every single year. Only with this wealth would he be able to buy even more cultivation resources. Yet now, this source of wealth was gone because of this person standing before him. Over 10,000 gold coins, that was his main source of wealth, and even his heart was bleeding because of this. When he thought up to here, Duan Jun's eyes narrowed before he said, "Trash. Is the cousin brother of I? Duan Jun? Someone you can bully? Die." As soon as he finished speaking, his figure flashed while his palms slapped towards Xianxia's face. When he noticed Duan Jun attacking directly and even directly executing a lethal strike, Xianxia's face sank, and he shouted in a low voice while his fist smashed down towards Duan Jun's palm. Bang! The palm and fist collided. Xianxia took 3 steps back while Duan Jun similarly took 3 steps back. In their first collision, the two of them were equally matched. A wisp of surprise flashed past Duan Jun's eyes when he noticed himself being forced back by Xianxia, and he sized Xianxia up before he said, "You're already a profounder? But so what if you are? I only utilized 10% of my strength just now, so it's time to die now." As he spoke, the profound energy in his body surged, while he was prepared to attack once more and annihilate Xianxia. Wait! Xianxia took a step forward and gazed at Duan Jun, while his eyes similarly flickered with killing intent. Because Duan Jun was aware that Du Xiu and the others had been punished by Elder Chen, yet he didn't dare to look for trouble with Elder Chen, so he came looking for Xianxia instead. Moreover, he executed a lethal strike as soon as he attacked, and this caused Xianxia to be infuriated. "What? You intend to beg for mercy?" Duan Jun said with ridicule. "If you knew this would happen, then why act in that way? Even though my cousin brother was only a labor disciple, he wasn't someone a piece of trash like you can bully. Now kowtow 1,000 times to me and shout loudly that you were wrong, and then get the fuck out of the sword sect. Then, maybe I can consider sparing your life. I challenge you to a battle on the life and death arena." Xianxia stared at Duan Jun in the eyes as he spoke with a firm tone. Silence, deathly silence. All the labor disciples in the surroundings and Duan Jun himself were stunned. A labor disciple challenged an outer court disciple? And it's even on the life and death arena? As its name implied, the life and death arena was a place where life and death were decided. It was impossible to avoid enmity between the disciples of any sect. So, since something had occurred, then it should be dealt with in the right way. The reason the sword sect had established this life and death arena was to deal with the enmity between disciples. Once an irreconcilable enmity appeared between disciples, then they could challenge the other party. Of course, the challenger couldn't be more than 2 cultivation ranks higher than the person being challenged. Xianxia originally didn't intend to issue such a challenge to the life and death arena, but when he saw Duan Jun strike a lethal attack against him, he knew that Duan Jun didn't intend to let him off at all. On the other hand, once he fought Duan Jun on the spot, then no matter if he won or lost, he would still suffer a loss. If he lost, then it was obvious, Duan Jun could torture and kill him. If he won, then not only would he be unable to obtain any benefits, he would even be unable to kill Duan Jun. It was even to the extent that he would be in trouble by just injuring Duan Jun. After all, he was only a labor disciple now. Only at the life and death arena would he be in a fair situation against Duan Jun, and he would be able to kill Duan Jun. Ha ha! After he returned to his senses, Duan Jun roared with laughter as he pointed at Xianxia, and he revealed undisguised disdain and said, "I'm going to die of laughter. The number 1 piece of trash in history actually challenged me on the life and death arena? On what basis are you issuing this challenge? Because you're the number 1 piece of trash in history." Xianxia was completely indifferent towards Duan Jun's disdain, and he said, "According to the rules of the sword sect, when someone of lower cultivation challenges someone with higher cultivation, then that person can't refuse. Of course, you can refuse me if you insist. However, in that way, the sword sect will probably start spreading news of how you, Duan Jun, didn't even dare to accept the challenge of a labor disciple. I know you're provoking me." Duan Jun laughed coldly and said, "However, I accept your challenge. Don't worry, I won't kill you. I'll smash all the bones in your body, one by one, on the life and death arena and in front of everyone within the sword sect. I'll allow everyone to understand that a piece of trash will only be a piece of trash. Even if you become a profounder, you'll still be a piece of trash. Are you done? If you're done, then I'll see you on the life and death arena." Xianxia glanced indifferently at Duan Jun, and then he turned around and walked towards the life and death arena. When he saw Xianxia's casual appearance, the killing intent in Duan Jun's eyes grew denser. "A piece of trash like you is trying to act like an expert?" Xianxia hadn't just destroyed his source of wealth. Yang Yi had even challenged him in public now. He felt that being challenged by a labor disciple was a humiliation to him. "I'll make you suffer." Yang Yi challenged an outer court disciple to a battle on the life and death arena. "Come. Let's go quickly to watch it." "What? Are you sure?" Yang Yi challenged an outer court disciple. "Is something wrong with him in the head?" "It's you that have something wrong in your head. Your whole family has something wrong within them in the head. Just a moment ago, the cousin brother of that bastard Du Xiu went looking for trouble with Yang Yi. Yet he never imagined that Yang Yi had already become a profounder. Moreover, he challenged Du Xiu's cousin brother on the spot. Now, they've already headed to the life and death arena. You should go over quickly. Yang Yi is already a profounder? Nice. Let's go cheer for Yang Yi. Outer court peak. What? A labor disciple challenged one of us outer court disciples? It's even that number one piece of trash in history. Are you sure? Isn't that number one piece of trash in history not even a profounder? I don't know. In any case, they've already headed to the life and death arena. Let's go over quickly. If we're too late, then that labor disciple would be killed already, and we wouldn't be able to watch the show. I'll go notify the others. A labor disciple challenged one of us outer court disciples? It's even at the life and death arena? He really has an exaggerated opinion of his ability. Come. Let's go see how one of our outer court disciples teaches him a lesson. In next to no time, the news of Yang Yi challenging an outer court disciple had swiftly swept through the labor peak and outer court peak like a plague, and the few thousand labor disciples and few hundred outer court disciples rushed to the life and death arena. On the life and death arena, an old man that wore a green and white robe looked at Yang Yi and the green-clothed man. However, the old man's gaze had mostly descended onto Yang Yi. The old man was called Chao Hua, and he was an outer court elder of the sword sect that managed the enforcement team in the outer court. In the past, he'd witnessed numerous battles on the life and death arena, yet it was still the first time he'd witnessed a labor disciple challenge an outer court disciple. Chao Hua waved his right hand, causing two crystalline energy stones to float towards Yang Yi and Duan Jun, and he said, "There are no rules on the life and death arena, and both of you can utilize any methods. For the sake of fairness, both of you should fully replenish the profound energy within your bodies now, and then begin." As soon as he finished speaking, the old man's figure flashed towards the side. "You're dead." Duan Jun gazed at Yang Yi and spoke indifferently. Yang Yi didn't reply. He walked over to the nearby weapon rack instead, and he chose a sword from amongst them. The sword was 1.5 m long, 2 fingers broad, and forged from ordinary iron that was refined 100 times. It wasn't anything good, and it was unranked. Green Hornet Sword, low-grade yellow rank, capable of slicing iron like mud. Meanwhile, a sword appeared in Duan Jun's hand. He looked at Yang Yi and said, "But don't worry, I won't kill you. I'll sever the tendons in your arms and legs, smash the bones in your entire body, and then dispatch someone to send you back to your home so that you and your family can endure your pain together. What do you think? I'm benevolent, right?" Yang Yi casually swung the sword in his hand, and then he said indifferently, "Don't worry, I'll be benevolent to you as well." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi sat cross-legged and absorbed the energy within the energy stone. Duan Jun's eyes flickered with ghastly and cold-killing intent, and then he sat down cross-legged and absorbed the energy within the energy stone as well. At this moment, over 100 outer court disciples were looking at Yang Yi and the green-clothed man from a spot outside the life and death arena. One of them, with an oblong face, said to the outer court disciple by his side, "Zhang Qiushui, Duan Jun is at the 8th rank of the mortal realm. I don't know what's the cultivation of that labor disciple, but I bet that Duan Jun will definitely take his head within 10 moves. I bet it'll be 5 moves." The man called Zhang Qiushui looked at the man with an oblong face and said, 20 energy stones. Do you dare to take me up on this bet? You think so lowly of that labor disciple? The man with an oblong face spoke with a smile. He entered the sect for 2 years, yet he has only become a profounder now. Is such a piece of trash worthy of me thinking highly of him? Zhang Qiushui said with disdain. How about it? I'll bet 20 energy stones that Duan Jun will take his head in 5 moves. Dare to take my bet? Why not? The man with an oblong face roared with laughter. Since that labor disciple dared to challenge Duan Jun, then he definitely possesses some ability. I don't believe that he wouldn't even be able to resist 10 moves. Does anyone else want to make a bet? I bet on 5 moves. I bet on 10 moves. I bet 50 energy stones. That labor disciple will win. Right at this moment, a clear and resounding voice that seemed immature resounded. All the outer court disciples were stunned. When they turned around to look, they saw a little girl around the age of 14 or 15 grinning as she looked at them. The little girl wore a light yellow dress with flower patterns, and it covered her slender figure that had started to take shape. She had willow leaf-shaped brows, small cherry lips, and a pair of lively eyes that frequently spun about and revealed a strand of slyness. The little girl was none other than Bauer from the Talisman Peak. She'd especially come to look for Xianxia today, yet she never expected that Xianxia would actually get in a fight with someone. Not had she imagined that these fellows before her would actually look down upon Xianxia. She knew how formidable Xianxia was, and Xianxia possessed profound energy of the 5 elements. When all the outer court disciples noticed that it was a little girl, they were slightly surprised. Even though the little girl was young, they were still able to imagine the peerless elegance she would possess once she matured. Moreover, some of their eyes even revealed a wisp of a lustful glow. When she noticed some of them had such detestable gazes, Bauer grunted coldly, and then she withdrew a stack of talismans before walking over to Zhang Qiushui and the others. She said, I want to bet with you. I bet that little laborer will win. Zhang Qiushui was stunned. However, when he saw the stack of talismans in Bauer's hand, Zhang Qiushui was instantly stunned on the spot. He returned to his senses after a long time, and his originally cold and proud expression had become zealous as he asked in a light voice, You're from the Talisman Peak? Meanwhile, all the other outer court disciples had noticed the stack of talismans in Bauer's hand. Those were talismans that only the experts ranked in the top 10 of the outer court rankings had the qualifications to receive from the Talisman Peak. All of their gazes burned with desire. Bauer grunted and said, Yes, I bet that labor disciple will win. Are all of you betting of not? She really disliked these people because not only did they look down upon the little laborer, they even gazed at her with that type of detestable gazes. So she intended to win away all of their cultivation resources. She intends to be that labor disciple will win. All of the outer court disciples glanced at each other when they heard this. Is something wrong with this little girl's head? She actually wants to bet that the labor disciple will win. After all, Duan Jun was already at the 8th rank of the mortal realm, whereas the labor disciple was at most at the 4th or 5th rank of the mortal realm. So, would he be able to defeat Duan Jun? When they thought up to here, all of them glanced at each other before they utterly revealed undisguised greed from their eyes. Zhang Qiushui's eyes flickered, and then he said, We can bet with you. However, you have to be the broker because all of us are betting that the labor disciples loses. What do you think? Bauer thought for a moment, and then she said, All right, all of you place your bets. I can accept bets of any sizes. Zhang Qiushui suppressed the excitement in his heart and continued. Look, there are a few hundreds of us. That's quite a huge sum. If you lose, then... Bauer naturally knew what Zhang Qiushui meant. She immediately raised her brows before withdrawing a pile of talismans from within the small pouch before her and said, Oh, there are around 20 talismans here, and all of them are at the mid-grade. Every single one of them can be sold for around 500 energy stones. If I lose, then I'll use that to pay my debts. Is that all right? Mid-grade talismans? As they gazed at the talismans in Bauer's hand, all of their eyes burned extremely brightly with greed. Every single mid-grade talisman wasn't something that merely 500 energy stones could buy. If they got it and sold it, then even getting 1,000 energy stones wouldn't be a problem. This time, there was no need for Zhang Qiushui to say anything, and all the outer court disciples hurriedly nodded and agreed. It was a rare occurrence that someone generous would come to give them free wealth, so if they didn't grab it, then they would suffer the wrath of the heavens. I bet 500 energy stones. Meanwhile, Jiang Qiushui spoke abruptly. I don't have so many energy stones with me now, so you can remember the amount for now. If I lose, then I'll definitely give it to you. We're all outer court disciples, so we don't deceive you. When they heard Jiang Qiushui, all the labor disciples were stunned. 500 energy stones wasn't a small amount. After all, they were only able to obtain 20 energy stones every single month. So, did Jiang Qiushui really possess so many? Just as those outer court disciples thought, Jiang Qiushui really didn't possess 500 energy stones. However, he wasn't afraid. Because was it possible for that labor disciple to win? The answer was absolutely impossible. Bauer thought for a moment and said, "All right, all of you place your bets as well. I'll remember it all for all of you." She wasn't afraid that these fellows would go back on their word because no one in the sword sect dared to take advantage of her. I'll add another 2,000 energy stones. When he heard that they could be owed, for now, Jiang Qiushui immediately added another 2,000 energy stones. He would definitely not forgive himself even he didn't take advantage of such a generous person. When they heard Bauer agree to allow Jiang Qiushui to owe her for now, a commotion arose amongst the other disciples, and then they immediately placed their bids. I'll bet 1,000 energy stones as well. I'll bet 800. I'll bet 2,000. When she saw all of them placing their bets, Bauer smiled to the point her eyes narrowed, and then she hurriedly withdrew a brush to note down all their bets. In her opinion, it was best if Yang Yi was able to win, and it was fine even if he lost. At any rate, not only were there a huge amount of such talismans in the Talisman Peak, even she herself could craft them as well. On the life and death arena, at a certain moment in time, both of them opened their eyes at the exact same moment before their gazes collided. Duan Jun's eyes flashed with undisguised ghastly killing intent, whereas Xianxia's eyes were calm and tranquil. The two of them stood up. Duan Jun waved the green hornet's sword in his hand while he revealed a ridiculing smile and said, "Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. I'll allow you to strike 3 moves against me first." Even though Yang Yi was already a profounder, he wasn't afraid. Not only was he at least 2 ranks of cultivation higher than Yang Yi, his weapon and sword technique were things that Yang Yi didn't possess. So, he was prepared to play the role of a cat that was playing with a mouse. "Idiot!" Yang Yi cursed in his heart while walking towards Duan Jun with sword in hand. When he arrived 2 meters before Duan Jun, Yang Ye's indifferent eyes suddenly flashed with a wisp of a savage expression. In the next moment, Yang Ye's right leg suddenly stomped on the ground and relied on the force of this collision to shoot out like a cannonball and stabbed his sword at Duan Jun. At the place where Yang Ye's foot descended, the hard floorboard there had already completely sunken down now. Yang Yi had utilized his full strength in this strike. At the instant Yang Ye's figure had just charged out, the outer court elder at the bottom of the arena, who was originally on the verge of falling asleep, had suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes revealed a wisp of surprise. At the moment Yang Ye's figure suddenly charged over, Duan Jun's expression changed greatly, and his eyes were filled with terror. At such a close distance and coupled with Yang Ye's sudden charge, he was utterly not in time to dodge or block the attack, and he could only watch as Yang Ye's sword stabbed on his chest. Ding! Yang Ye's sword stabbed at Duan Jun's chest, yet a clear and resounding sound of collision resounded, and then Duan Jun's figure retreated by over 10 steps. Yang Yi frowned when he noticed the sword actually hadn't pierced into Duan Jun's chest, and he didn't pursue Duan Jun and looked at the green-clothed man's chest instead. He saw that a layer of silver light was ceaselessly flickering beneath the green-clothed man's clothes. He's wearing armor. When he thought up to here, Yang Ye's eyes narrowed while the profound energy in his body surged. Duan Jun took a deep breath while he felt a lingering fear in his heart. He glanced at his chest, and he saw that the high-grade yellow rank armor he wore had already sunken in. What formidable strength! It was at least 500 kilograms of strength. Duan Jun had a solemn expression, and he knew that he'd underestimated Yang Yi. In the blink of an eye, Yang Yi had blasted Duan Jun back with a single strike, and it caused all the labor disciples below to explode with an uproar. Moreover, Some of their eyes even flickered with a glow of excitement. No matter what, Yang Yi was a labor disciple, and a labor disciple had blasted an outer court disciple back. So, they were naturally excited. Even a lion utilizes its full strength when hunting a rabbit. Yet this Duan Jun actually underestimated his opponent like that. He really is an idiot. Luckily, he was wearing an armor. Jiang Qiushui's expression was gloomy as he spoke after watching Duan Jun almost be instantly killed with a single strike. The other outer court disciples by his side nodded in agreement, and they heaved sighs of relief at the same time. They'd placed a good few months of energy stones on Duan Jun, and it was even to the extent that some greedy fellows had placed 1 or 2 years' worth of energy stones on Duan Jun. If Duan Jun lost, then they would truly be unable to endure the consequences. On the other hand, Bauer had clenched her small fists tightly, while her eyes flickered with the glow of excitement. I admit that I underestimated you slightly. However, I'll tell you right now, you still have no chance because I'm going to get serious. Duan Jun gazed at Yang Yi while the profound energy within his body circulated slowly, and as his profound energy poured ceaselessly into his sword actually started trembling slightly at this moment. A sword technique? Yang Yi spoke in a low voice when he noticed the light fluctuations being emanated from Duan Jun's sword. After that, the light gold profound energy within his body poured into the sword in his hand. As soon as it entered the sword, a light golden glow instantly flickered into appearance on the sword in his hand. However, this glow was extremely weak, and it was utterly impossible to notice unless one inspected it carefully. Looks like Duan Jun is about to get serious. Jiang Qiushui's gloomy expression eased up slightly. This time, he'll determine the outcome with a single strike. Duan Jun intends to utilize the energy split sword technique. A wisp of a smile appeared on an outer court disciple's face. The energy split sword technique is a high-grade yellow rank sword technique. Since Duan Jun dares to utilize it, then it represents that he's able to execute a strand of sword chi. That labor disciple is dead. The energy split sword technique? I never expected that Duan Jun has actually learned it. Hehe. That labor disciple is dead. Haha. 300 energy stones, it's sufficient for me to cultivate until the first heaven realm. Haha. Alas, if I knew Duan Jun has already cultivated a sword technique successfully, then I should have increased my bet. It was only 100 energy stones. What a waste. Yeah, what a waste. Seriously, that Duan Jun really concealed his strength. At this moment, the outer court disciples seemed as if they'd already seen piles of energy stones being placed before them. When she noticed the excitement of these outer court disciples, Bauer grunted coldly with dissatisfaction, and then she glanced at Yang Yi while a wisp of worry flashed in her eyes. Suddenly, a savage expression appeared abruptly in Duan Jun's eyes, and he held the sword in his hand before suddenly slashing towards Yang Yi. Energy split sword technique. As soon as his voice resounded, a snow-white strand of sword chi around a meter long shot out explosively towards Yang Yi from the tip of Green Hornet's sword. The speed of the sword chi was extremely swift, and it whistled as it arrived before Yang Yi in practically 2 breaths of time. When the sword chi arrived a meter away from Yang Yi, he moved. His right leg stomped on the ground and relied on the strong repulsive force from this to shoot out swiftly, and at the same time, the sword in his hand stabbed towards the snow-white strand of sword chi. Hiss! Perhaps because the force behind it was so enormous, everywhere Yang Ye's sword passed, numerous fluctuations that were visible to the eye had appeared in the air, and it emanated a sharp sound from the air being torn apart. Waiting for the enemy to attack before reacting to it. When he saw Yang Yi go head-on against it, the outer court elder below the arena said in a light voice, "Interesting. It's the first time I've seen someone cultivate the basic sword technique to perfection. Not bad." Bang! The sword and snow-white sword chi collided with each other, and an explosion resounded. After that, Yang Ye's sword instantly sliced through the snow-white sword chi, like it was hot oil melting through snow, and then his speed didn't reduce while he instantly arrived before Duan Jun with his sword in hand. After that, under Duan Jun's astounded gaze, the sword swung swiftly towards his right and left legs, Duan Jun's face was covered in disbelief. Never had he imagined that the sword chi he executed would actually be so easily slashed into two by Xianxia. That was a sword technique. However, before he could recover from his shock, Xianxia had appeared once more before him, and he was terrified in his heart. He instinctively utilized the sword to block Xianxia's attack, and then retreated backward. Ding! Ding! Their swords collided without end and emanated the sounds of metal colliding, and it was like a beautiful musical composition. When they saw Duan Jun being suppressed and ceaselessly retreating, all the labor disciples in the surroundings were utterly stunned. It wasn't just the labor disciples, even the outer court disciples nearby were stunned. A labor disciple was suppressing an outer court disciple in battle? Is that the number one piece of trash in history? All the outer court disciples at the side had shocked expressions. Never had they imagined that the sword chi would actually be cut apart by Xianxia. Exactly what sort of strength and speed would be needed to accomplish that? Originally, they wouldn't care even if Duan Jun lost, but now, if Duan Jun lost, then they wouldn't be able to repay that little girl even if they sold themselves. When she saw Xianxia slash through the sword chi with a single strike, a smile bloomed on Baoer's face, and her lively eyes flickered with the glow of excitement. In the arena, Xianxia was actually able to finish Duan Jun since a long time ago, and the reason he hadn't finished Duan Jun was that he was training his sword. He was extremely familiar with the basic sword technique, and he was able to execute it even with his eyes closed. However, he lacked actual combat, and since he had a chance now, he would naturally not let it go. Xianxia felt more and more relaxed, and his attacks grew more and more smooth as he fought. Whereas, the battle grew more and more exhausting and strenuous for Duan Jun. Xianxia actually merely utilized a few moves throughout the battle. Even though it was only a few moves, those moves were a great headache to Duan Jun when utilized in a nimble manner. Moreover, Xianxia's speed and strength were shocking to him, and he'd never imagined that the basic sword technique actually possessed such might. It's about time to end it, as he sensed himself being more and more skilled in the basic sword technique. The corners of Xianxia's mouth curled up into an arc. After that, the sword in his hand sped up, and he launched a ferocious attack against Duan Jun. When he saw Xianxia suddenly attack ferociously, Duan Jun panicked in his heart, and his sword moves fell into disorder. Xianxia's eyes lit up, and his sword stabbed straight towards Duan Jun's chest. This caused Duan Jun to be shocked and immediately blocked it. Right at this moment, Xianxia's sword suddenly changed from stab to slash, and it pierced into Duan Jun's right hand at an extremely tricky angle. H! A strand of fresh blood sprayed out from the injury on his right hand. The intense pain at that instant caused Duan Jun to let out a shrill cry, and then the green hornet sword in his hand fell from his grasp and onto the arena. At the same time, a sword that was covered in a cold glow touched his neck. Duan Jun had lost. When they saw Xianxia's sword touch Duan Jun's neck, the clamorous noise in the surroundings had vanished at this moment, and there wasn't a single sound coming from below the arena. Everyone was utterly stunned, and even a falling pin could be heard. Ha ha ha! Baoer roared with laughter while she glanced at all the outer court disciples around her. She seemed as if she was saying, "Look, I had the better foresight." At this moment, all of those outer court disciples still had stunned expressions. Never had they imagined that Duan Jun would still lose after utilizing a sword technique, and they were unable to accept such an outcome even until now. In the arena, Xianxia gazed at green-clothed man whose eyes were filled with terror, and he said, "I can spare your life." Duan Jun revealed a delighted expression when he heard this, and then he said, "Really?" As if he'd thought of something, he continued, Go ahead and tell me your conditions. Your cultivation resources and gold coins," said Xianxia. All right, Duan Jun hurriedly nodded, and then he withdrew a pouch and a silver-colored card before passing it to Xianxia. He said, "There are 20 energy stones here. I just received them today. On the other hand, this card has around 10,000 gold coins within it, and it can be utilized all over the Grand Qin Empire." Xianxia's eyelids jerked when he heard there were 10,000 gold coins within it, and then he put away the pouch and card. When he saw Xianxia put them away, A wisp of resentment flashed in the depths of Duan Jun's eyes, and he said in his heart, "Just you wait. I'll repay the enmity of today by 100 times in the future." After he confirmed there were indeed 20 energy stones within the pouch, Yang Yi smiled as he nodded to Duan Jun. When he saw Yang Yi smile, Duan Jun heaved a sigh of relief. However, right at this moment, Yang Ye's eyes narrowed while he swung the sword in his hand towards Duan Jun's arms and legs. A shrill and miserable cry instantly resounded on the arena. Duan Jun's hands and legs were chopped off, causing fresh blood to spray out like a fountain from Duan Jun's arms and legs, and the intense pain from this caused Duan Jun's entire face to twist and warp. Why? Duan Jun lay on the ground while he shouted hysterically at Yang Yi. Yang Yi laughed with ridicule and said, "I told you I wouldn't kill you, but I didn't say I wouldn't cripple you. I wouldn't be able to sleep in peace while keeping a disaster alive by my side." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi sat down cross-legged and withdrew an energy stone to recover the profound energy within his body. Duan Jun was angered to the point of spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood, and then he started cursing furiously and hysterically on the ground. The outer court elder below the arena glanced indifferently at Duan Jun, who lay on the ground, and then he shook his head before instructing others to take Duan Jun away. "Hey! Hand over the energy stones." Bauer ran over to Jiang Qiushui and the others, and then she stretched out her small hand and said, "I've counted it, and all of you have to give me a total of 390,000 energy stones. Quickly hand it over." When they heard this, the countenance of all of the outer court disciples here instantly turned ghastly pale.